Chapter 3883 The Black Tortoise Realm. Qin Feiyang took off his mask, and his blood-red hair and eyes returned to normal. The Feather Emperor said worriedly, "Feiyang, are you confident in 1,000 years?" Before Qin Feiyang left, he left a recording of what happened outside. So the Feather Emperor, Little Rabbit, Blood Ancestor, and Long Chen were all in the Black Tortoise Realm and witnessed the whole process. I haven't even seen a single genius of the Divine Kingdom. How can I be confident? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. This was just a delaying tactic. He would delay as long as he could. Hearing this, the Feather Emperor, Little Rabbit, and Blood Ancestor looked at each other and then at Long Chen. "Why are you looking at me?" Long Chen was suspicious. Blood Ancestor laughed. "You have the strongest backing here. At the critical moment, of course, we have to count on you." Long Chen was speechless. "It's not like you don't know my situation. Count on me? I still want to follow you. If Ice Dragon wants to help, we don't need to find him. He will do it. But if he doesn't want to, it's useless even if we kneel and beg him. So, we shouldn't have too much hope for him. 1,000 years is neither long nor short. You don't have to be too nervous. The problem we have to solve now is Dragon King, and the other two." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. He was certainly willing to kill Dragon King and the other two, but after all, the Feather Emperor and other seniors were present. Naturally, he had to ask for their permission first. Dragon King and the other two deserve to die. Now that we can contribute to the Sky Cloud realm, it can be considered as accumulating some merit for the next generation in advance. Blood Ancestor sneered. "I don't have any objections. Besides, we have no choice now." Feather Emperor shook his head. The reason why he hadn't killed Dragon King and the other two was that he thought that when facing the Divine Kingdom in the future, one more person would be one more force. But now, the Lord of the Divine Nation had specifically asked for their heads. What else could they do? For the Sky Cloud realm, they could only be sacrificed. Seeing that the Feather Emperor and the Blood Ancestor had no objections, Qin Feiyang looked at Long Chen. "Whatever." Long Chen shrugged. "Truth." Qin Feiyang asked, "What do you think?" Long Chen asked, "All right, let's go to hell right now and take their lives." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with killing intent. "Let's not do it in the Underworld King's hell. If they become desperate and harm the creatures of the Underworld King's hell, I'll have to trouble myself to bring them to the Sky Cloud realm." Long Chen shook his head. Qin Feiyang looked at Long Chen, his eyes flickering. "What is it? Are you still worried about me?" Long Chen asked with a smile. "No. However, I'm worried that you won't be able to intimidate them if you go alone. Therefore, I think it's better for the old ancestor to accompany you." Qin Feiyang smiled. "As long as you're happy." Long Chen smiled faintly. With the Heavenly God sword, how could he not intimidate the Dragon King trio? This guy had an ulterior motive. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice to the Blood Ancestor. "Old Ancestor, keep an eye on him. Don't let him play any tricks." The Blood Ancestor secretly responded. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent the two out. "Are you guarding against Long Chen?" Feather Emperor asked. "I have to be wary of him." Qin Feiyang sighed. This was a reliable teammate, but at the same time he was also a frightening opponent. The Little Rabbit asked, "Then, should we continue to let everyone stay in the Underworld King's hell?" Staying in the Underworld King's hell is indeed safer, but because of the restrictions of the rules, it's difficult for everyone to improve their cultivation. Feather Emperor shook his head. Then the Little Rabbit scanned the Black Tortoise realm. "Big Brother, don't have any ideas about the Black Tortoise realm. This place can't be compared to the Sky Cloud realm. It can't hold so many creatures." Qin Feiyang hurriedly shook his head. If they squeezed, it was still possible. However, he really didn't want to destroy the peace of the Black Tortoise realm. Because once the creatures of the Sky Cloud realm entered the Black Tortoise realm, they would inevitably fall into chaos. But we can't let them stay in the Underworld King's hell forever. The little rabbit frowned. Indeed, we can't. Why don't we let them return to the Sky Cloud realm? In any case, haven't we already fought for 1,000 years of peace for them? Qin Feiyong said. A mere 1,000 years will pass in the blink of an eye. Feather Emperor shook his head and sighed. Everyone needs to grow. We can't always protect them. What's the difference between that and a flower in a greenhouse? Moreover, to contend against the Divine Kingdom, we alone are far from enough. We need the entire Sky Cloud realm to work together. In short, no one can stay out of it. Qin Feiyong said. That's fine too. Let everyone return. Everything will return to its original state. Perhaps there will be a turn for the better in less than 1,000 years? The Feather Emperor smiled. If there really is a turn for the better, that would naturally be the best. Qin Feiyong said with a smile. Then he looked up at the sky and shouted, Little brat, let the god-slaying tablet come out and undergo the tribulation. Clang! Accompanied by a loud sound, the god-slaying tablet fell from the sky. A vast divine aura instantly enveloped the devil's land. At the same time, tribulation clouds were rolling in the sky. Wait a moment. Don't undergo the tribulation here. Qin Feiyong's expression changed. He immediately took the god-slaying tablet, the little rabbit, and the Feather Emperor and left the Black Tortoise realm. Don't undergo the tribulation in the heavenly cloud sea. The little rabbit roared. Then where should we go? Qin Feiyong asked. Go, go, go to the land of the buried gods. Anyway, that place has already been destroyed. The little rabbit waved its paw and opened a space-time tunnel. The three of them immediately took the god-slaying tablet and descended in the sky above the core area of the land of the buried gods. The gate to the Divine Kingdom was at the peak of the sky. The little rabbit rolled its eyes and said with a sneaky smile, Do you think we can borrow the power of the god-slaying tablet's tribulation to destroy the gate to the Divine Kingdom? Qin Feiyong and the Feather Emperor looked at each other. It might work. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed, and he said with a smile, The god-slaying tablet should be here. How troublesome. The god-slaying tablet spoke. Its voice sounded a little childish, like an 8 or 9-year-old child. You think it's troublesome? Whose tribulation is this? Qin Feiyong's face darkened. The god-slaying tablet said angrily, Kid, don't be arrogant. Be careful. When this sovereign undergoes the tribulation, you will be the first to be suppressed. Qin Feiyong was stunned. Although the god-slaying tablet had been in the Black Tortoise realm for a long time, this was his first time interacting with it. This first impression was not good. Fine. Consider me a busybody. If you can, don't ask us for help later. Old ancestor, big brother, let's retreat. Qin Feiyong snorted coldly. Then he left with the Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit without even looking back. Don't go. Why are you so stingy? The god-slaying tablet hurriedly shouted. Don't go? Stay here and wait for death? You're on your own. Qin Feiyong said without looking back. You have no loyalty. The god-slaying tablet scolded. Rumble. Crack. In the sky, blood clouds rolled in and instantly covered the entire sky above the core area. Clang. However, at the same time, the gate to the Divine Kingdom, which was floating at the peak of the sky, instantly descended in the sky above the central region. Qin Feiyong, the Feather Emperor, and the little rabbit looked at this scene in shock. They originally wanted to use the power of the tribulation to destroy the gate to the Divine Kingdom. However, they did not expect the gate to be so cunning and run faster than them. Chapter 3. Release at 10 a.m. Chapter 3884. However, it could be seen from this point. The sovereign weapon's heavenly tribulation could indeed threaten the door of the divine kingdom. Otherwise, why would it run? Boom! As the first heavenly tribulation descended, the entire land of buried gods was shrouded in a terrifying heavenly might. Qin Feiyang, Feather Emperor, and Little Rabbit stood in the sky above the inner region. Feeling the terrifying heavenly might, they decisively opened the portal again and appeared in the sky above the central region. They were quite knowledgeable, especially Qin Feiyang. He had undergone more than 1 or 2 heavenly tribulations. When he was in the Chaos Royal City, he saw the undead tribulations every day. But this time, the God-slaying tablet's heavenly tribulation was more terrifying than any he had seen before. Even the undead tribulations couldn't be compared to this heavenly tribulation. Even though he was in the central region, he could feel a fatal danger. Crack! When the first heavenly tribulation descended, the God-slaying tablet shattered. So cruel! The God-slaying tablet panicked. It knew that the sovereign weapon's heavenly tribulation was terrifying, but it didn't expect it to be this terrifying. This was only the first heavenly tribulation. After that, there were a total of 98 heavenly tribulations. How could it succeed? Brother Qin, Boss Qin, Qin Dage, Uncle Qin, don't leave me to die! Come and help. The God-slaying tablet couldn't help but roar hysterically due to the fear in its heart. Ancestor, Big Brother, what should we do? Qin Feiyang looked at Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit. Needless to say, these sovereign weapons in the castle couldn't help at all. Moreover, his sovereign weapons, Fire Dance's sovereign weapons, and the land of buried gods' sovereign weapons had all been damaged when they fought with the divine dragon sword. Although the sovereign weapons in the hands of the beast emperors were still intact, they were far from enough. The only thing we can do now is use your 3,000 incarnations and the Eye of Heaven to help it, Feather Emperor said in a low voice. Then we have to enter the central region. Qin Feiyang frowned. Yes, there's no other way. I'm afraid that even Long Chen's heavenly god sword won't be able to block all of the heavenly tribulations. Furthermore, Long Chen isn't here right now. Even if he were, he wouldn't be obligated to help the god-slaying tablet overcome its tribulation. Feather Emperor shook his head. Then let's do it. Qin Feiyang gritted his teeth. It hadn't been easy for him to nurture a sovereign weapon. He couldn't allow it to be destroyed by the heavenly tribulation. Crack! While they were talking, the second heavenly tribulation descended. The god-slaying tablet shattered into pieces. The Little Rabbit opened a space-time tunnel. While the third heavenly tribulation was brewing, it descended into the core region. I knew you were the best. The god-slaying tablet immediately shouted, Stop flattering me. Qin Feiyang glared at it and decisively brought the Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit into the ancient castle. They appeared in the sky above the blood sea of the western regions. His long hair and eyes instantly turned blood-red, and a blood-red mask condensed once again, which he wore on his face. The gate of the divine kingdom was still watching from above. Therefore, he still had to use the identity of Qin Shaotian to help. As for coming to the blood sea of the western regions, of course, it was to prevent innocent creatures from being hurt when replicating the ultimate profound meaning. After all, the ultimate profound meaning wasn't a joke. If it was in the land of the devils, the aura emitted by replicating thousands of ultimate profound meanings would be enough to raise the land of the devils to the ground. Big Brother, activate your ultimate profound meaning. Then Qin Feiyang looked at the Little Rabbit and chuckled. Don't you have it yourself? The Little Rabbit looked at him. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Who are you kidding? Since returning from the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, you haven't been willing to show your strength. What do you mean? The Little Rabbit raised its eyebrows. Nothing. Hurry up. The third heavenly tribulation is about to descend. It's too late to wait. Qin Feiyang urged. The Little Rabbit rolled its eyes at him and immediately activated two ultimate, profound meanings. They were the space-time laws and the time laws. That's it. Qin Feiyong was stunned. The blood ancestor once said that when the little rabbit was in the sky bell divine treasure, it had obtained the inheritance of two ultimate laws. In addition, after so many years, it was impossible for this guy to only have two ultimate, profound meanings. Yes, that's it. What's the matter? The little rabbit snorted. Nothing. Qin Feiyong smiled embarrassedly. Needless to say, this little rabbit must be holding back. He activated 3,000 clones and began to replicate. In the blink of an eye, outside, the third heavenly tribulation descended. Heartless bastard, just you wait. I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Seeing that Qin Feiyong didn't appear for a long time, the god-slaying tablet thought that he had abandoned it and immediately cursed. Really? If you say so, then I'll really leave. With a cold snort, Qin Feiyong appeared with 3,000 clones. Don't. I'm talking about Feather Emperor and the others, not you. The god-slaying tablet smiled flatteringly. Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes and transmitted his voice. Call me Qin Feiyong now. Don't call me Qin Feiyong. Okay, the god-slaying tablet said to itself. Qin Feiyong looked up at the heavenly tribulation with a serious expression. The 3,000 clones leaped up and crossed the sky above the god-slaying tablet. Then 6,000 ultimate profound meanings soared into the sky and formed a huge shield wall that separated heaven and earth. Boom! The heavenly tribulation bombarded. The three ultimate profound meanings were instantly shattered, but the heavenly tribulation was successfully blocked. However, the power was indeed shocking. The power of one heavenly tribulation actually shattered three ultimate profound meanings. One had to know, each ultimate profound meaning was comparable to a sovereign divine weapon. It was really fortunate that he didn't ask the sovereign divine weapon to help. Otherwise, the sovereign divine weapon would have been fatally injured. Fortunately, he had replicated 6,000 ultimate profound meanings. The number was large enough to block all the heavenly tribulations. Boom! At this moment, in the central region, at the gate of the divine kingdom, a middle-aged man walked out. He was about 30 years old and about 8 meters tall. He wore a purple gold robe. His eyebrows were like swords, and his aura was monstrous. Heavenly tribulation. As soon as this person appeared, he looked at the sky of the core region and frowned slightly. Immediately after, he waved his hand and a space-time tunnel appeared. Before entering the space-time tunnel, he glanced at the mountains and rivers below and muttered, "Blood Demon King, I'm here again. Unfortunately, you're already dead. This time, I'd like to see who else can stop me." The core region. Qin Feiyong was paying attention to the 3,000 clones. But suddenly, he felt something and turned to look at the sky above the core region. He saw a space-time tunnel appear. Was it Long Qin? The next moment, when the man from the divine kingdom walked out, Qin Feiyong's pupils suddenly shrank. It's him. Black Tortoise World. Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit were also paying attention to the situation outside through the image in the void. When they saw the man from the divine kingdom appear in the image, their eyes suddenly trembled. A strong killing intent emerged uncontrollably. Feiyong, it was him who led the divine kingdom's army to invade the Nether King's hell. The blood demon king died in his hands. Feather Emperor transmitted. What? Qin Feiyong's body trembled. As expected, there are 3,000 clones. The man from the divine kingdom looked at the 3,000 clones and murmured. His eyes fell on Qin Feiyong and asked, "You're Qin Shaotian? You're the one who invaded the Nether King's hell back then?" Qin Feiyong asked. "Yes, it's me." The man from the divine kingdom didn't hide it at all and sneered. "I wonder if there are any blood demons alive now." Qin Feiyong clenched his hands and said in a deep voice, "You'll pay the price." "Price? What's that?" I really don't know. But I heard that you're very strong, and you're the son of the princess and the human emperor. Let me have a taste of your strength." The man from the divine kingdom waved his hand. The space-time law roared out, and a river of stars suddenly descended from the sky. "You've already found out about me so quickly. It seems that you're quite concerned about me. However, the Lord of the Divine Kingdom has already promised me that the older generation can't fight. Are you going to defy the order of the Lord of the Divine Kingdom?" Qin Feiyong said, "It's just a spar." "Why?" "Now that your 3,000 clones are restrained by the heavenly tribulation, you don't even have the courage to spar with me?" The man from the Divine Kingdom sneered. "Feiyong, let me out. This bastard, I've long wanted to kill him to avenge the blood demons." Feather Emperor transmitted. "Do you need to deal with such a small character?" Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. "Don't underestimate him. Besides, this is a feud between the older generation. Why are you, a young man, interfering? Just focus on helping the god-slaying tablet transcend the heavenly tribulation." Feather Emperor was displeased. "Fine." Qin Feiyong was helpless. With a thought, Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit came out. When enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. Not only Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit, but when the man from the Divine Kingdom saw Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit appear, his eyes were filled with killing intent. He sneered and said, "You two old farts are really lucky. Aren't you the same?" After saying that, Feather Emperor took a step into the sky. A shocking force of death immediately surged out. The ultimate profound, 18 layers of hell, appeared in an instant. Not bad. I remember that back then you only mastered the ultimate profound of the law of nothingness. Killing intent flashed in the eyes of the man from the Divine Kingdom. The river of stars fell, and everything was destroyed. Accompanied by a loud noise, the two ultimate profound collided violently. At this moment, the man from the Divine Kingdom and Feather Emperor attacked each other at the same time. Although they said it was a spar, each of their attacks was fatal. Below, Qin Feiyong was stunned. He looked at Little Rabbit and asked, "Ancestor, have you mastered the ultimate profound of the law of nothingness?" "Yes. The ultimate profound of the law of sword and the law of death were comprehended by him in recent years." Little Rabbit nodded. Qin Feiyong suddenly understood. As expected, not only the Dragon King, but also Feng Ho, the Qilin Master, and everyone else were growing. However, what about the human sovereign? Blood Ancestor and Feather Emperor had both returned. The Blood Demon Lord might also be reincarnated. Although the crazy man knew now, he didn't tell Qin Feiyong. So, Qin Feiyong wasn't sure whether the crazy man was the reincarnation of the Blood Demon Lord or not. Everyone returned one after another. Did the human sovereign really die? Chapter 3885. Hundreds of breaths passed. More than half of the God-slaying tablet's tribulation had passed. No matter what kind of tribulation it was, they all had one thing in common. Each one was stronger than the last. Now, one tribulation was enough to shatter dozens of ultimate mysteries. This was equivalent to dozens of sovereign weapons. From this, one could see, if not for the 3,000 incarnations and the Eye of Heaven, even with the help of hundreds of sovereign weapons, the God-slaying tablet wouldn't be able to pass the tribulation. No wonder there were so few sovereign weapons in the sky cloud realm. Without anyone's help, only a miracle would allow one to survive such a heavenly tribulation. Did the castle pass a tribulation back then? Suddenly, Little Rabbit looked at Qin Feiyong and asked. No. Qin Feiyong shook his head. After the castle merged with the Black Tortoise realm, it evolved into a sovereign weapon as the Black Tortoise realm grew. It seems that I don't have to worry about the castle in the future. Little Rabbit muttered. Yes. Qin Feiyong nodded. The castle was different from other sovereign weapons. Other sovereign weapons needed to absorb the world's origin energy to grow, and the growth was quite slow. But the castle was different. As the black tortoise realm grew, the castle would grow with it. The two complemented each other. It was a good thing that there was no tribulation. After all, now that the god-slaying tablets tribulation was so terrifying, it would be even more terrifying when it evolved into a mid-level or even a high-level sovereign weapon. However, as the black tortoise realm grew bigger, its growth seemed to be slower and slower. It seemed that he had to collect more crystal veins and spirit veins to accelerate the growth of the black tortoise realm. This way, the castle could evolve into a mid-level sovereign weapon faster. At that time, the castle, the flame magic sword, two mid-level sovereign weapons, facing the divine kingdom's experts, he had more confidence. On the other side, the feather emperor and the man from the divine kingdom had already killed their way out of the core area and entered the inner area. Everywhere they went, the sky fell and the earth cracked. Dust and smoke billowed. It was like the end of the world. Both of them were bleeding profusely, but their injuries didn't seem to be important to them at all. There was only killing intent in their eyes. Eastern continent, outside the entrance of the land of the buried gods. 5 figures stood against the wind, looking at the inner area and the core area. It was Long Chen, the Blood Ancestor, and the Dragon King. This aura! The Blood Ancestor stared at the inner region and clenched his fists tightly. What is it? Long Chen was suspicious. It's him. The Blood Ancestor's eyes were filled with hatred. Him. Long Chen frowned. The Dragon King said, back then it was this person who led the divine kingdom to invade the lower realm, causing the people of the underworld to be plunged into misery and suffering. I see. Long Chen nodded and looked at the Blood Ancestor. It seems that you really want to kill him? Of course. The killing intent in the Blood Ancestor's eyes was undisguised. Long Chen smiled and said, then why don't you help the Feather Emperor kill him? The Blood Ancestor was taken aback and turned to look at Long Chen. His eyes flashed as if he wanted to see through Long Chen. However, he discovered that the young man before him was as unfathomable as the ocean. Don't worry, I won't play any tricks. Long Chen smiled faintly. The Blood Ancestor secretly sneered. Who knew if he would play any tricks? In any case, this ancestor will keep an eye on you at all times. As for the Dragon King and the other two, they still didn't know what was going on. They also didn't know the conditions offered by the Lord of the Divine Kingdom, because when Long Chen and the Blood Ancestor went back to find them, they only said that they had something to discuss in the Sky Cloud realm. Sigh. Long Chen sighed helplessly, opened a teleportation channel, and led them to the core region. They're here. Qin Feiyang sensed their auras and turned his head to look. Yes. Long Chen nodded with a smile and rushed to Qin Feiyang's side. He looked up at the heavenly tribulation and said in surprise, what a terrifying heavenly tribulation. Qin Feiyang glanced at Long Chen and said, Ancestor, is there anything wrong with Long Chen? No. Keep an eye on him. The Blood Ancestor thought. That's good. Qin Feiyang breathed a sigh of relief. He was afraid that Long Chen would secretly do something to help the Dragon King and the other two. Looking at Feng Ho and the other two. As soon as they arrived here, they looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Who was this person? Because Qin Feiyang was wearing a mask and changed his aura, they didn't recognize him for a while. Qin Feiyang noticed their eyes, turned to look at them and took off his mask. It's you. Feng Ho's eyes suddenly flashed with hatred. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. He was wearing a mask again, but there was a trace of goodwill in the eyes of the Kirin Master and the Dragon King. This made Qin Feiyang quite surprised. One had to know. When they just returned from the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, the two hated him to the bone. However, whether it was goodwill or malice, it didn't matter now. For public or private reasons, the 3 of them must die. Boom! Another 100 breaths passed. The last heavenly tribulation descended. Not to mention the land of buried gods. Even the eastern and northern continents outside were shrouded by the terrifying heavenly might. Qin Feiyang and the others stood below and couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. If it weren't for the 3,000 incarnations standing in the sky, blocking the heavenly might, just the aura at this moment was enough to seriously injure all of them. Should we retreat? Long Qin frowned. Qin Feiyang was silent, staring at the 3,000 incarnations. There were still more than 4,000 ultimate mysteries left. Although the power of the last heavenly tribulation was the sum of the previous 98 heavenly tribulations, more than 4,000 ultimate mysteries shouldn't be a problem to block this heavenly tribulation. Dragon King and the other two looked at this scene and were extremely shocked. Was this the complete Eye of Heaven? It could even replicate the ultimate mysteries of the strongest law. With these 3,000 incarnations and the Eye of Heaven, who in the sky cloud realm could be Qin Feiyang's opponent, Dragon King had indeed planned to reconcile with Qin Feiyang in his heart. After all, now, Qin Feiyang had already expressed his position and would always stand together with the sky cloud realm. Moreover, the Feather Emperor and the Blood Ancestor had returned one after another, and the Princess of the Divine Kingdom had also escaped. Qin Feiyang's backer had become even more powerful. Continuing to fight wouldn't benefit the dragons at all. But now, looking at the heaven-defying ability of the Eye of Heaven, Dragon King couldn't help but feel resentment in his heart, because the other half of the Eye of Heaven belonged to the Crown Prince of the Dragons. If the Crown Prince of the Dragons had defeated Qin Feiyang back then and obtained Qin Feiyang's Eye of Heaven, then the dragons would be the ones rising now. Although the Crown Prince of the Dragons didn't have 3,000 incarnations, with the heaven-defying Eye of Heaven, he could still look down on the entire sky cloud realm. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the heavenly tribulation fell. The 3,000 incarnations smiled coldly, and more than 4,000 ultimate mysteries, carrying the power to destroy the heavens and earth, rushed into the sky. Accompanied by an earth-shaking loud noise, the last heavenly tribulation was crushed as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Then more than 4,000 ultimate mysteries rushed into the sky. Suddenly, a big hole appeared in the sky. It could be said to be shocking as it directly pierced through the sky. Feng Ho and the other two trembled. Their faces, which were shrouded in divine light, were pale. This was Qin Feiyang's current strength? Terrifying. It was simply unparalleled. Haha, the god-slaying tablet laughed. Finally, it succeeded in transcending the tribulation. A golden cloud surged and bestowed blessings. The broken body of the god-slaying tablet was not only quickly repaired, but its aura also soared to the level of a sovereign divine weapon in an instant. A sovereign divine weapon was born. A smile also appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. Although there were many sovereign divine weapons around him now, a sovereign divine weapon that he had personally nurtured felt different. It was like his own child. However, this child in front of him seemed to be a little rebellious. God, slaying tablet, come to me. Feng Ho came back to her senses and stared at the god, slaying tablet. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Feng Ho. Did this woman not know the situation she was in now? She was still thinking about the god-slaying tablet. They still don't know that we are going to kill them. The Blood Ancestor secretly explained. No wonder. Qin Feiyang mumbled. Feng Ho. The god-slaying tablet, of course, recognized Feng Ho, because back then it was in the Feng people. Furthermore, he was rather fearful of the Phoenix Empress. Even now, Feng Ho was a terrifying existence in its eyes, let alone back then. After all, Feng Ho had mastered 3 ultimate mysteries and was far more powerful than it. Hey! Don't forget who helped you transcend the tribulation. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. I know, the god-slaying tablet snorted impatiently and said indifferently, "Feng Ho, I'm sorry, but I prefer to stay by that girl's side." The so-called girl was naturally referring to Huwu. It had always been in the land of origin and didn't know about the feud between Huwu and Feng Ho. However, not long ago, when it came out of the land of origin, it sensed Huwu's aura in the devil's land. As a sovereign divine weapon, was it stupid? Of course not. If Huwu was in the black tortoise realm, then there must be something fishy. Feng Ho was full of hostility when she heard this. "Don't look like you want to eat me. I am a sovereign divine weapon now." The god-slaying tablet snorted. A smile appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. He turned to Feng Ho and shook his head. "I'm really convinced that you are still in the mood to think about the god-slaying tablet." "What do you mean?" Feng Ho raised her eyebrows. The Dragon King and the Qilin Master looked at each other, and an ominous premonition arose in their hearts. At the same time, the rabbit, the blood ancestor, and Long Chun walked over to the three of them. Along with Qin Feiyang, they surrounded the three of them. The three's hearts trembled. "Sorry, I didn't want to kill you for the time being, but there's no other way. The Lord of the Divine Kingdom wants your heads." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "The Lord of the Divine Kingdom. You have already met the Lord of the Divine Kingdom." The three were shocked. "That's right. We have agreed on the terms. From now on, the older generation of the Divine Kingdom and the Sky Cloud Realm will not interfere in this war. But the condition is that we need your heads." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Bastard." The three were furious. "Don't blame us. If you want to blame someone, blame yourselves. If you hadn't sealed the princess of the Divine Kingdom back then, the Lord of the Divine Kingdom wouldn't be so angry. So, you only have yourselves to blame. In short, you will die sooner or later anyway. Why don't you make some contributions to the Sky Cloud Realm now? Kill yourself, lest we have to do it." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Long Chen, the Dragon King, looked at Long Chen. "Don't look at me. It is indeed the request of the Lord of the Divine Kingdom. I can't do anything about it." Long Chen shrugged. "I refuse to accept it." Dragon King roared furiously. He stared at Qin Feiyang and said, "Don't forget, the reason why your Eye of Heaven could evolve is because of our dragon race's crown prince's Eye of Heaven." Chapter 3886. What's the point of bringing up old grudges now? We'll talk about it later. Are you the ones who gave me the Eye of Heaven? No. This is what I won from the first prince after defeating him fair and square. Qin Feiyang shook his head. What about me? I've been taking care of the Fire Qilin and the others for you all these years. That can be considered a favor, right? Said Master Qilin solemnly. I won't deny that. I'm also very grateful to you for that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spared the divine Qilin's sword in the sky, Bell Divine Treasury. You should know that if I want to, Qi Xiaoyun and the White Jade Qilin won't be able to stop me. Therefore, I've already repaid the favor. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Master Qilin sank into silence. Feng Ho said solemnly, In any case, you want to kill us, right? Yes. Back then, you ambushed the mortal emperor, the feather emperor, and the blood ancestor to seal the princess of the divine kingdom. Now, you're plotting to kill me. You're destined to die. Of course, you won't die in vain. First of all, your deaths will bring 1,000 years of peace to the Skycloud realm. This is a great contribution. Secondly, death is like an extinguished lamp. In the future, the grudges between me and the 3 races will be written off. In other words, I won't target the 3 races anymore. But there's a condition. They won't take the initiative to cause trouble. Qin Feiyang said. Then shouldn't we be grateful to you? The 3's eyes turned cold. No, I should be the one thanking you. Thank you for all the sacrifices you've made for the Skycloud realm. Although you are selfish, your contributions cannot be erased. Please go on your way. At that time, we will give you a proper burial." After saying that, Qin Feiyang looked at the three in silence. Haha, I really didn't expect that after sacrificing so much for the Sky Cloud realm, we would end up like this. Qin Feiyang, you are really ruthless. Dragon King laughed bitterly and suddenly soared into the sky. His aura surged out as he stared at Qin Feiyang and said, "You want me to submit obediently? Never." Feng Ho and the Qilin Master looked at each other and rose into the air. They stood beside the Dragon King and said in a low voice, "Come and fight with us. Let us see how strong you are now." Sigh. Qin Feiyang sighed. "There's no need for such trouble. Sky God Sword you go." Long Chen waved his hand. Clang! Accompanied by a loud noise, the heavenly god sword appeared and shot towards the three of them like lightning. "Long Chen, do you still have a conscience? I've taken care of you, your mother, and your sister all these years. Is this how you repay me? I won't let you go even if I become a ghost." Dragon King was furious, his face full of resentment. The three ultimate mysteries were activated. Feng Ho and the Qilin Master's faces were also full of madness, and the power of law roared out. "Become a ghost? You don't even have the chance to become a ghost." The heavenly god sword snorted coldly, and its sharp edge swept in all directions, crushing the three of them. Hum, roar, chirp. The three of them returned to their original forms and struggled madly, but it was meaningless in the face of the heavenly god sword. Their physical bodies were instantly shattered, and blood splattered across the sky. Only their heads were left. Whoosh! Following closely, three, terrifying, sword chi entered the heads of the three of them. With a shrill scream, their divine souls were annihilated on the spot. The remaining head was also dripping with blood. With a bang, it fell in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. Qin Feiyang released his divine thought and shrouded the heads of the three, and found that their divine souls were indeed shattered. He turned to Long Chen and frowned. "You're quite proactive. Isn't this saving you the trouble of exposing your identity?" Long Chen smiled. The heavenly god sword swept over and disappeared into his body. Qin Feiyang took a deep look at Long Chen. He also wanted to see something from Long Chen's expression, but just like the blood ancestor, he didn't find anything at all. He was indeed a difficult character to deal with. However, in any case, the death of the Dragon King and the other two was already in front of him. Speaking of which, it was really sad. The three lords of the Forbidden Areas were killed in seconds. Just like that. No one would have thought of this. "Let's go." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, rolled at the heads of the Dragon King and the other two, and rushed toward the inner area. The inner area, the Feather Emperor and the man from the Divine Kingdom fought fiercely. Thus it could be seen that the strength of the man from the Divine Kingdom was no longer what it used to be. When Qin Feiyang and the others arrived at the battlefield, the man from the Divine Kingdom immediately raised his eyebrows and retreated like lightning. "It's not over yet." The Feather Emperor snorted coldly, like a god of war, and his aura was like a rainbow. "Feather Emperor, stop." Qin Feiyang spoke. His words were filled with an extremely imposing aura. The Feather Emperor stopped in the void, turned his head, and looked at Qin Feiyang unhappily. How dare he call his name directly? Impudent. However, when he saw the huge heads of the Dragon King and the other two, the Feather Emperor's face faintly showed a trace of relief. Qin Feiyang took the three heads and walked to the side of the Feather Emperor. He looked at the man from the Divine Kingdom opposite him and said indifferently, "These are the heads of the Dragon King and the other two. Take them back and give them to the Lord of the Divine Kingdom." After saying that, he threw the heads of the three over. He really killed them? The man from the Divine Kingdom was stunned. He looked at the three heads for a moment and said to Qin Feiyang, "Ruthless indeed, but are these really their heads? Although they are dead, their aura is still there. Can't you tell?" Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold. The man from the divine kingdom looked at the heads of the three again. Back then, he had fought with the Dragon King and the other two. Judging from the aura, it was indeed the Dragon King and the other two. However, he looked at Qin Feiyang again and said, "How do I know that you didn't keep their souls? Are you deliberately looking for trouble?" The eyes of the blood ancestor and the little rabbit turned cold, and a terrifying aura spread out. "Ha! The man from the divine kingdom laughed and rushed toward the door of the divine kingdom with the three heads. But suddenly, he stopped, looked down at Qin Feiyang, and asked curiously, "Qin Feiyang, I'm really curious. Are you the son of the human emperor and the princess, or their descendant? Is there a difference?" Qin Feiyang replied indifferently, "Of course there is a difference. If you are a son, you are the flesh and blood of the princess. But if you are a descendant, at most you will have the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon." The man from the divine kingdom sneered. "Get lost." Qin Feiyang really didn't want to talk nonsense with this person. "You have a personality. Get ready. The younger generation of the divine kingdom will soon arrive. At that time, you will realize that even if the older generation of the divine kingdom doesn't make a move, the Sky Cloud realm has no chance of winning. Ants, they are just ants in the end." The man from the divine kingdom laughed wildly and left with the heads of the Dragon King and the other two without looking back. When the man from the divine kingdom entered the gate of the divine kingdom, the gate of the divine kingdom reappeared in the sky above the core area. "He is too arrogant. Fortunately, you stopped me. Otherwise, I would have killed him directly." The god-slaying tablet clamored. Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. They turned to look at the god-slaying tablet and asked suspiciously, "When did we stop you? You are so domineering. Why don't you just kill your way to the divine kingdom? We will cheer for you from behind." The god-slaying tablet laughed dryly. It was just showing off. Why did it have to be so serious? This guy is a little unreliable. Long Chin pulled Qin Feiyang's sleeve and whispered, "What do you mean by a little unreliable? He is very unreliable." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at the god-slaying tablet and looked at the gate of the divine kingdom. His eyebrows gradually knitted together. Long Chin looked at the gate of the divine kingdom and sized up Qin Feiyang. He said in surprise, "You don't really want to kill your way into the divine kingdom, do you?" The blood ancestor, the feather emperor, and the little rabbit immediately looked at Qin Feiyang. "I do want to, but I don't have the courage." Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. "At least you have some self-awareness." Long Chin smiled and asked, "Then what should we do next?" "What do you think?" Qin Feiyang asked. Long Chin glanced at the land of buried gods and pondered for a while. Then he said, "Since the gate of the divine kingdom is here, I suggest that we make the land of buried gods the battlefield between us and the divine kingdom." "I agree, so that we won't destroy other places." The Feather Emperor nodded. "But the younger generation of the divine kingdom might not do as we wish. I'm afraid that all places in the Sky Cloud realm will fall into chaos." The blood ancestor was worried. "Then we will have to step in." The Feather Emperor's eyes flashed coldly. He looked at the blood ancestor and said, "From now on, we will guard the exits of the eastern and northern continents and do our best to stop them from entering the land of buried gods." "But didn't we agree that the older generation can't make a move?" The blood ancestor frowned. "We won't make a move. We will just stop them," the Feather Emperor said. "Then what if they insist on leaving the land of buried gods and entering the 4 continents?" the blood ancestor asked. "At that time, they would have no choice but to make a move unless they didn't care about the safety of the 4 continents." "You don't have to worry so much. At that time, if they really dare to harm the creatures of the four continents, the younger generation of the Sky Cloud realm won't be pushovers. Long Chun waved his hand. He seemed very relaxed. The Feather Emperor and the Blood Ancestor looked at Long Chin and couldn't help but feel bitter. It seemed that they were really old. They didn't even have this bit of confidence and aggressiveness anymore. All right, the next 1,000 years will be handed over to you youngsters. We old guys can also take this opportunity to rest. The Feather Emperor smiled. The Blood Ancestor also exhaled and said, "Then let's go back to the Nether King's hell and bring everyone back." Okay. The Feather Emperor nodded and looked at Long Chin. Although he also had the badge and could ignore the rules of the Nether King's hell, he didn't want to expose it too early. Long Chin took out the badge and waved his hand. A space-time tunnel opened, and a group of people entered one after another and disappeared. The Nether King's hell. People from various forces were gathered in the void at this moment. Before Long Chen and the Blood Ancestor left, they said that everyone would be able to return to the Sky Cloud realm soon. Therefore, they weren't in the mood to cultivate and were anxiously waiting. Therefore, when Qin Feiyang and the others returned, everyone's faces were filled with anticipation. Chapter 3887. Brother Qin, how is it? Python had been waiting for Qin Feiyang. Seeing Qin Feiyang appear, he immediately welcomed him with a face full of concern. It's fine for the time being. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. That's good. Python heaved a sigh of relief. Someone asked, "Can we return to Sky Cloud boundary now?" Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Great. This kind of life away from home is too painful. Everyone couldn't help but cheer. Even the people of the three races had a smile on their faces. Where's Lord Dragon King? Suddenly, a reclusive old antique of the dragons asked. Yes, I didn't see Lord Feng Ho and the Qilin Master. The people from the Phoenix clan and the Qilin clan also had suspicious looks on their faces. Qin Feiyang glanced at the people of the three races, looked at Long Chin, Feather Emperor, and the others, and said, "You guys make the arrangements. I'll go visit a few old friends." All right. Feather Emperor nodded. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Python and smiled. "Brother Hua, please take me to the ancient city of Qingyu. I knew you're going to visit them." Python smiled and immediately left with Qin Feiyang. The Golden Dragons asked, "Long Chin, what happened to Lord Dragon King? Why didn't he come back with you?" Long Chen looked at the Golden Dragons and then at the people of the three races and said indifferently, "The three of them are dead." What? The people of the three races were in disbelief. Ancient city of Qingyu. After so many years, this huge ancient city had not changed at all. The blood demon tribe that lived in the ancient city also lived their days in an orderly fashion. In the sky, Qin Feiyang and Python arrived silently. Looking at this familiar scene, Qin Feiyang's joy was hard to hide. And, suddenly, a blood demon youth in the city noticed Qin Feiyang and the fire python and raised his head to look at them. "Lord Guardian." The young man quickly flew up into the sky and said with a smile, "My lord, why didn't you tell us that you were coming to the ancient city of the Nether King? We could have come to welcome you. Since we're already so familiar with each other, what's there to welcome?" The fire python smiled. "This is—" The teenager looked at Qin Feiyang again. Qin Feiyang was also sizing up this blood demon youth. Very young. His cultivation was only at the War Emperor. Clearly, he was a junior of the Blood Demon King. Guess who he is? The fire python smiled mysteriously. This, the young man scratched his head in confusion, although he was still a youth in the blood demon race. Due to the enormous size of the blood demons, he was even taller than an adult. In the meantime, in the ancient castle below, more and more blood demons noticed Qin Feiyang and the fire python. The younger generation of blood demons looked at Qin Feiyang with curiosity, but the older generation of blood demons had bewildered expressions. And this bewilderment gradually turned into excitement. "Brother Qin!" Suddenly, a roar sounded, following closely, one by one. Huge figures rushed out from the ancient city, as if they were ancient giants. It was Shweta and the others. Seeing those familiar faces, a smile appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. He immediately walked up to them. "Brother Qin, you missed me so much." Shweta took the lead and gave Qin Feiyang a bear hug. "Don't be agitated, don't be agitated." Qin Feiyang roared. Didn't this guy know how strong he was? His small body was like an ant facing an elephant. How could he withstand this kind of enthusiasm? Shweta was stunned and hurriedly let go of Qin Feiyang. He smiled and said, "Sorry, I was too happy." Qin Feiyang helplessly moved the shackles, looked at Shweta, and then at Shweta and the others. He smiled and said, "Are you all okay?" "Okay." The group nodded. "Dad, who is he?" Why are the 10 commanders so excited? A teenager was suspicious. "Him. He is Qin Feiyang, the human who left countless legends in our Nether King's hell." The older generation of blood demons couldn't help but reveal a look of reminiscence. "What? He is the Qin Feiyang who challenged the divine dragon in our Nether King's ancient city back then." The younger generation of blood demons were shocked. "Yes." The older generation nodded. "He's our idol. I have to take a good look. Does he have 3 heads and 6 arms? He doesn't look like a big deal. His head is about the same as my thigh. How can he be so strong?" The younger generation of the blood demon tribe started to discuss this. Hearing these words, the older generation of blood demons was speechless. How could the height of a human be compared to the blood demons? Whoosh! At this moment, another figure soared into the sky with an excited expression. It was the Nether King. Senior Nether King. Qin Feiyang sensed the aura of the Nether King and immediately looked down. The smile on his face became wider, and he stepped forward to bow respectfully. "Good, good, good." The Nether King sized up Qin Feiyang and couldn't help but laugh heartily. "Our Lord Nether King is still the best. No matter how strong he is, he has to bow respectfully when he sees our Lord Nether King." A teenager said proudly, "Kid, what do you know? He is respecting the Lord Nether King." Let me tell you, Qin Feiyang's strength back then was already not weaker than the Lord Nether King, let alone now. The older generation scolded jokingly. What a bunch of naive little guys. The Nether King suppressed his excitement and bowed to the fire python. "Greetings, Lord Guardian. I've already said so many times, you don't have to be so polite in front of me." The fire python was dissatisfied. "Of course you have to be polite. After all, there are so many juniors watching below. As the elders, we have to set a good example." The Nether King smiled. "Up to you." The fire python was helpless. The Nether King looked at Qin Feiyang again and said emotionally, "In the blink of an eye, so many years have passed. I thought that I would never have the chance to see you again. How could that be? Regardless of going to the Sky Cloud realm or returning to the Great Qin, don't we have to pass through the Nether King's hell? If I pass through the Nether King's hell, I will definitely come and visit you." Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Sigh. The Nether King couldn't help but sigh when he heard this. "Why?" Qin Feiyang didn't understand. "Although you've become stronger, your character hasn't changed at all. You're not like other people. Once you become stronger, you will become arrogant." The Nether King smiled. "Don't worry. This kind of thing will never happen to me." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Suddenly he sensed another aura. He lowered his head and looked at the entrance of a hall in the center of the ancient city. He saw an old man in blood-red clothes standing at the entrance, looking up at him. This old man was the Nether King's father. Back then, he had tried every possible means to possess Frenzied. It was just that he didn't know if he had given up on this idea after so many years. However, even if he hadn't, he no longer had the chance now. Because with Frenzied's current strength, killing this old man would be as easy as blowing off dust. Humph! The old man in blood-red clothes snorted when he saw Qin Feiyang looking over. He then turned around and entered the hall without looking back. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. It seemed that this old man was still brooding over what happened back then. If this old man had really succeeded in possessing Frenzied, then the one who was famous in the sky cloud domain now wouldn't be Frenzied. The Nether King noticed this scene. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said apologetically, "Brother Qin, don't mind him. You know my old father's character. He's just like that. It's okay." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. He glanced at the blood demon race below and felt a myriad of emotions in his heart. Who would have thought that the seemingly weak blood demon race would be the hero who stopped the divine kingdom from invading the lower domain back then? It could be said that if the Blood Demon King hadn't brought the Blood Demon race to the Nether King's Hell to stop the experts of the Divine Kingdom, the first and second levels, including the Great Qin and the Ancient Domain, would have been plunged into misery and suffering. However, such a hero was now forgotten by the world and was even trapped in the Nether King's Hell. His cultivation would forever stop at the Ninth Heaven Realm. How unfair was this? Qin Feiyang sighed. He bowed to the blood demon race in the ancient city and said, "I represent the entire human race and all the common people to thank you." Huh. Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. King Yu, Shweta, and the others were the same. Qin Feiyang didn't explain. He smiled and said, "You will understand in the future." Ridiculous. Shweta scratched his head and didn't think much. He patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder and said, "Brother Qin, it's not easy for you to come here. Why don't we get drunk today?" Qin Feiyang looked at Shweta in astonishment. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. "How can I be in the mood to drink now? I still have a lot of things to deal with." Shweta was stunned. He frowned and said, "Don't tell me you are leaving soon." "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. Shweta was unhappy. "Shweta," King Yu scolded and sighed. "Although we know nothing about the Sky Cloud Realm, the living beings of the Sky Cloud Realm have all come to the Nether King's Hell. Something big must have happened. Brother Qin must be busy dealing with it. But there is no need to be in such a hurry." Shweta muttered, "There really can't be any delay. Now that the passage to the 4th floor has collapsed, if I don't go back with everyone now, I won't be able to go back in the future." Qin Feiyang smiled. King Yu was stunned and asked, "Are the people of the Sky Cloud Realm leaving?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. King Yu smiled and said, "Then this is good news. The Nether King's Hell has finally returned to peace." "Yes. All these years, we have caused you too much trouble." Qin Feiyang smiled. "It's not that troublesome. We don't have much interaction with them. They have never been to the ancient city of the Nether King. It's just that they are not used to a group of strangers suddenly coming." King Yu waved his hand. "Strangers," Qin Feiyang murmured. "If Blood Demon King didn't bring the Blood Demon clan to the Nether King's Hell back then, would they still be strangers? Of course not. The Blood Demon clan's roots were in the Sky Cloud Realm. No, he had to let the Blood Demon clan return to their homeland." Qin Feiyang clenched his hand slightly and raised his head to look at the unhappy Shweta. He smiled and said, "Brother, don't be like this. There will be plenty of opportunities to drink together in the future." All right, I know you are a busy man." Shweta pursed his lips. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly. After a moment of silence, he turned to look at Python and said, "Brother Hua, why don't you help me inform the old ancestor and ask him to come to the Nether King's Hell to pick me up in 2 days?" "Brother Qin, there is really no need," King Yu hurriedly said, not forgetting to glare at Shweta. But Shweta directly ignored him. His face was full of excitement as he shouted to the clansmen below, "What are you all standing there for? Get moving, prepare wine and dishes, and properly entertain Brother Qin." Immediately, the clansmen of the Blood Demon clan became busy. Looking at this scene, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel a warm current in his heart. Even though they weren't family, they were better than family. Python also shook his head and smiled, secretly contacting the Feather Emperor. As the guardian of this place, he naturally didn't need to go personally and could secretly communicate with the Feather Emperor. After receiving Python's message, the Feather Emperor smiled helplessly and continued to arrange for everyone to leave the Nether King's hell. This kid was really popular no matter where he went. Chapter 3888. At night, it was lively and noisy. In front of these blood demons, Qin Feiyang was like a dwarf. But this did not affect their communication and friendship at all. Moreover, he had already experienced the blood demon race's banquet. The wine bowls were just like huge vats. Moreover, be it the wine or the food, they all contained evil power. However, for the current Qin Feiyang, this evil power was no longer a threat to him. He could just refine it later. Of course, in front of these old friends, Qin Feiyang naturally would not be stingy. He took out hundreds of thousands of vats of divine wine. The entire ancient city was immediately enveloped in the fragrance of wine. Is this the taste of divine wine? It is indeed different. Shweta laughed loudly. Vats of divine wine were continuously poured into his stomach. With his size, a jar of divine wine was just a matter of drinking it in one gulp. Be more polite. This is divine wine, not plain water. Kinyu glared at Shweta. It's okay. I have plenty. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Did you hear that? I have plenty. Brothers, drink to your heart's content. Why don't we take all of his divine brew tonight? Shweta shouted at the top of his lungs. The others also joined in the commotion. Kinyu was helpless. It's okay, as long as everyone is happy. Qin Feiyang comforted them. They are only so happy to see you. Kinyu shook his head. Qin Feiyang glanced at them one by one. These faces really made one's heart feel warm. Wait. Suddenly, Kinyu slapped his head. What's the matter? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Kinyu said, I seem to have missed someone. Who is it? Qin Feiyang and the fire python exchanged glances and looked at him doubtfully. Follow me. Kinyu got up and soared into the sky, flying toward the southern city wall. Qin Feiyang and the fire python followed behind Kinyu. Very soon, the city wall came into sight. There was a huge dragon lying on the city wall. This giant dragon was dozens of meters long, and its entire body was snow white. It lay on the city wall motionlessly, as if it was an exquisite sculpture. It was a snow dragon. Snow dragons were very rare. Because the snow dragon was the same as the white jade Qilin, it could be considered a mutated divine beast. So it was him. The fire python suddenly understood. You know him? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. The fire python smiled. Look at the head of the snow dragon. Qin Feiyang looked at the top of the snow dragon's head, and his expression froze. He saw a black-clothed youth lying on the snow dragon's head. This young man looked to be in his 20s. He was dressed in rags, and his eyes were closed. There was a green foxtail in his mouth, and he was snoring faintly. When he came back to his senses, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but smile bitterly. So it was this guy. Who would have thought that he would be in the ancient city of Kinyu? He came to the underworld king's hell with the people from the Sky Cloud realm. However, he has been sleeping here ever since he arrived. We didn't dare to disturb him. Kinyu was helpless. He had seen this young man before. Back then, he brought the ancient city of Kinyu along with Qin Feiyang and the others to the Fallen Valley. At that time, he had met this young man in the Fallen Valley. Not only was this young man not afraid of the evil force in the Fallen Valley, his strength was unfathomable. Hence, Ever since the young man came to the ancient city of King Yu, King Yu had been carefully worshipping him. Now, King Yu brought Qin Feiyang here. Obviously, he wanted Qin Feiyang to bring the young man back to the Sky Cloud realm. Little brother, Qin Feiyang walked over. The young man slowly opened his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang indifferently. He didn't say a word and closed his eyes again. Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. Why was this guy so listless every day? Qin Feiyang landed on the city wall and looked at the snow dragon with a smile. Not bad, you changed your mount again. What's with that look? The snow dragon looked at Qin Feiyang in disdain. Huh. Qin Feiyang was stunned. This voice wasn't the voice of the snow python. You are. Qin Feiyang looked at the snow dragon in surprise. Yes, it's me. The snow dragon nodded. Not bad. Qin Feiyang was extremely surprised. This snow python had actually transformed into a snow dragon. It was really like a fish leaping through the dragon gate. How is it? Do I look good right now? The snow dragon smiled proudly. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. The snow dragon was really much more beautiful than other divine dragons. Immediately, Qin Feiyang looked at the motionless and silent young man and said helplessly, Little brother, can you give me some reaction? What reaction do you want? You're not a little girl. Do you want me to pamper you? The young man yawned, slowly opened his eyes, and looked at Qin Feiyang unhappily. Why did he come here? Didn't he see me sleeping? Qin Feiyang's face twitched fiercely. Pamper? It was a bit inappropriate to use this word on two grown men. Hurry up and drink with them. Don't disturb my sleep. The young man waved his hand impatiently and was about to close his eyes again. You know I'm here? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Nonsense. You made such a big commotion. How could I not know? The young man rolled his eyes helplessly. Since you know, why didn't you come to visit me? Qin Feiyang asked. If you're a little girl, I can consider it. Unfortunately, you're not. The young man laughed. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He stepped forward and grabbed the young man, saying, Let's go and have a few drinks. We've known each other for so long, but we've never had a good drink together. Aren't you annoying? Is it so difficult to sleep? The young man roared in dissatisfaction. Qin Feiyang ignored him and dragged him to the banquet. Seeing the arrival of the young man, Shweta and the others were suddenly a little nervous. It's fine. We're all on the same side. Qin Feiyang smiled. After 3 rounds of drinks, Qin Feiyang looked at the young man beside him and asked curiously, Why didn't you go to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure this time? What's so fun about that place? The young man said with a lazy look. Qin Feiyang looked at the young man in surprise and asked, Have you been to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure before? Cough, cough. The young man coughed and shook his head, saying, I haven't been there. If you haven't been there, how do you know it's not fun? And looking at your expression, it seems a little unnatural. Tell me honestly, who exactly are you? After so many years, no one has investigated your origin. Qin Feiyang was curious. My origin, the young man muttered and grinned. If I say that I'm the son of the god of creation, would you believe me? The son of the god of creation? Qin Feiyang was stunned. King Yu and Fire Python also looked at the young man in a daze. If you're the son of the god of creation, then I'm the brother of the god of creation. Shweta laughed loudly. The young man looked at Shweta with a strange expression. Qin Feiyang, King Yu, and Fire Python could not help but shake their heads and laugh. See, it's not easy for me to tell you the truth, but you don't believe me. What can I do? The young man shrugged. Okay. We believe that you're the son of the god of creation. Come, let's have a drink. Qin Feiyang held the wine cup and did not take it to heart. In the next few days, Qin Feiyang completely relaxed. During the day, he strolled around and looked around. At night, he drank and chatted merrily. especially the blood demon youth. At first, they were still somewhat in awe of Qin Feiyang, but as they slowly got along with him, they realized that Qin Feiyang was very easy to get along with. He did not put on any airs at all. Hence, they stayed by Qin Feiyang's side all day long. Qin Feiyang would also teach them cultivation sometimes. With his current strength, just a few pointers would be enough to benefit these juniors for the rest of their lives. But there was a problem. It had been lingering in Qin Feiyang's heart. That night, everyone gathered together as usual, drinking and chatting. After it ended, Qin Feiyang sat on the city wall and looked up at the evil moon with a frown. "What are you thinking about here alone?" Fire Python flew over and looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and smiled at Fire Python. After pondering for a while, he asked, "Brother Fire, you're now the guardian of the Nether King's hell. Do you know why the blood demons can't leave the Nether King's hell?" "Can't leave the Nether King's hell?" Fire Python was slightly taken aback and shook his head. To be exact, the blood demons can't leave the evil power because once they leave the evil power, they won't be able to cultivate. The result of being unable to cultivate will slowly become unable to survive. Then why is that? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Fire Python pondered for a while and said, "According to my observations over the years and my understanding of the blood demons and other creatures, it should be related to the marks on their bodies." "I know this." Qin Feiyang nodded. Whether it was the blood demons or other creatures of the Nether King's hell, they all had marks on their bodies. Although they all have marks, their marks are different. The marks of the blood demons are the evil moon and the evil sun, while the marks of the other creatures are a skull. But no matter what the marks are, they all have one thing in common, and that is that they can all absorb the evil power. Although the other creatures here can't directly absorb the power of the evil sun and evil moon like the blood demon race, they still rely on the power of the evil sun to survive here. Fire Python said. Qin Feiyang nodded. He already knew about these marks back then. His initial guess was that these marks were related to the laws of the Nether King's hell, which was the same as the original Black Tortoise world. The original creatures of the Black Tortoise world also had marks. Later, when he became the ruler of the Black Tortoise world, he erased these marks. This way, the creatures of the Black Tortoise world wouldn't continue to be bound by the marks. But now, Qin Feiyang had another opinion. There was a fundamental difference between the Black Tortoise world and the Nether King's hell. The Black Tortoise world was an independent world, but the Nether King's hell was just one of the continents in the divine ruins. In other words, the Nether King's hell wasn't an independent world. A world that wasn't independent couldn't be the same as the Black Tortoise world. Actually, I have a guess. Fire Python hesitated for a moment and said, "What guess?" Qin Feiyang turned and looked at Fire Python suspiciously. Chapter 3889. Needless to say, the mark of the blood demon race must be because of the evil moon and evil Sunday, because they need this mark to borrow the power of the evil moon and evil Sunday. So, I'm talking about other creatures. I guess the marks on other creatures have nothing to do with the rules of the Nether King Hell. The Fire Python shook its head. Nothing to do with the rules. Qin Feiyang frowned. In fact, he had the same idea. That's right. What's really related is the evil moon and evil Sunday. The Fire Python nodded. Are you saying that the skull marks on other creatures appeared because of the evil moon and the evil sun? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes, because if you want to survive here, you must have the ability to not be afraid of the evil force. But the evil force is everywhere in the Nether King Hell. Except for the blood demon race, other races can't survive at all. Of course, an expert like you naturally has to be treated differently. After all, the evil force can't pose much of a threat to you. But for creatures below the imperishable realm, this evil force is fatal. The Fire Python said. That makes sense. Qin Feiyang nodded. The rules of the Nether King Hell were restrictions on cultivation, teleportation, and entering space divine objects. In fact, such restrictions were very common. For example, the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Although the Sky Bell Divine Treasure didn't have cultivation restrictions, the restrictions in other aspects were similar to the Nether King Hell. However, the undead in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure didn't have any mark on them. So, from this point, one could conclude, although the Nether King Hell had restrictions, these rules wouldn't form a mark on the creatures. Apart from the rules, the most unique thing in the Nether King Hell was the evil moon and evil Sunday. In this way, the origin of the mark was very likely because of the evil moon, and evil Sunday. Qin Feiyang looked up at the evil moon, shook his head and sighed. It seems that we have to wait for senior brother to come out to figure this out. I hope he can bring us good news, but I don't know what he is doing now. The fire python looked at the evil moon, its eyes full of suspicion. Who knows? Qin Feiyang shrugged. At that time, Madman didn't say anything and just assured him. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and turned to look at the fire python. He asked, "Brother Fire, has anyone else entered the Sky Cloud realm these years?" Enter the Sky Cloud realm? The fire python was stunned. It lowered its head and tried to recall. It shook its head and said, "I think so." "Wait, there's one." "Really?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. He was just asking casually. This was because many people in the ancient world and Great Qi knew about the existence of a fourth level. For example, Yi Zhong, the Beast Emperor, Uncle Yuan, and many others. He wanted to see if anyone would follow their footsteps and enter the Sky Cloud realm. But unexpectedly, there really was one. Yes. The fire python nodded and said with a smile, "This person is also your childhood friend." "Wait, aren't you in the Sky Cloud realm? Didn't she look for you?" "Childhood friends?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and scratched his head. The person who could be considered as his childhood sweetheart seemed to be only Lin Yi. Qin Feiyang quivered and asked, "Are you talking about Lin Yi?" "Yes, that's her." "It seems that you really don't know. Strange. You are also famous in the Sky Cloud realm now. Why didn't she look for you?" The fire python lowered its head with a puzzled face. Suddenly, its eyes trembled. It looked at Qin Feiyang and said in surprise, "Did she have an accident in the Sky Cloud realm?" Qin Feiyang's heart also sank. Who here knew the dangers of the Sky Cloud realm better than him? Not to mention the 4 continents. Even the Sky Cloud Sea was not something Lin Yi could set foot in. How could this be? Isn't it good to stay in the ancient world? Why did she go to the Sky Cloud realm? No, I have to find her quickly. But how should I find her? Qin Feiyang was a little flustered for a while. He had no clue. Don't worry. When she entered the Sky Cloud realm, she had already broken through to the imperishable realm. It shouldn't be a problem for her to protect herself. The fire python comforted. "Brother Fire, in the Sky Cloud realm, the imperishable realm cultivation base is nothing at all." Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. However, his anxious mood calmed down. Yes, Little Rabbit. Little Rabbit was in charge of Sky Cloud Island all year round. If someone entered the Sky Cloud realm, it would know. After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyang looked at the fire python and said, "Can you help me see if the old ancestor and the others have returned to the Sky Cloud realm?" The fire python closed its eyes and extended its perception infinitely. After a while, it opened its eyes and shook its head. "I didn't see anyone. They have all left. It has been a few days. Why hasn't the old ancestor come to pick me up?" Qin Feiyang frowned. Could it be that something happened in the Sky Cloud realm again? Don't worry. Heaven helps the worthy. Besides, if Lin Yi really has an accident, even if you rush back now, you can't change anything. The fire python comforted. Sigh. Qin Feiyang sighed deeply. I hope this girl is still alive. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Swish! Early in the morning, Feather Emperor finally arrived at the ancient city. Old ancestor, what happened to you? I told you to pick me up in 2 days. Look at it now. Half a month has passed. I thought you had forgotten me here. Qin Feiyong complained immediately. Aren't I busy settling down the creatures in the sky cloud realm? Besides, even if I forgot anyone, I wouldn't dare to forget you. After all, you are now the pillar of our sky cloud realm. Feather Emperor smiled. Greetings, Lord Feather Emperor. At this time, King Yu, Shweda, and the others rose into the air and bowed respectfully. You know each other? Qin Feiyong looked at King Yu and the others in surprise. Feather Emperor must know King Yu and the others. After all, Feather Emperor had been lurking in hell for so many years. But King Yu and the others shouldn't have seen Feather Emperor before. King Yu smiled and said, 2 years ago, Lord Feather Emperor came to visit us. I see. Qin Feiyong suddenly realized. Thinking about it, it made sense. The current Blood Demon tribe was made up of the descendants of the Blood Demon King. Thus, it was only natural for the Feather Emperor to visit them. No need to be so polite. Feather Emperor waved his hand and smiled. Looking at these giants in front of him, his heart was filled with emotions. If it wasn't for that battle back then, how could the Blood Demon race have fallen to such a state today? They had even been forgotten by the creatures in the Sky Cloud realm. It was all for the sake of the world. But soon, the Blood Demon race would be free. Huff! Taking a deep breath, Feather Emperor looked at Qin Feiyong and asked, Aren't you going to take the opportunity to return to Great Qin to take a look? Great Qin, Qin Feiyong murmured and shook his head. Forget it. If we go back now, we will only add more psychological burden to ourselves. After we deal with the Divine Kingdom, we will go back together. All right, Feather Emperor nodded. Looking at King Yu and the others and the fire python, he smiled and said, Then we will return to the Sky Cloud realm first. Take care. King Yu cupped his hands. The fire python looked at Qin Feiyong and said sincerely, Brother Qin, I definitely can't help you, but I am in charge of the 3rd floor of the Divine Site. It will always be your safe haven. Thank you. Qin Feiyong was touched. Go. For the sake of the world, do your best. The fire python smiled. Qin Feiyong nodded and looked at the young man who was still sleeping not far away. He smiled and said, Little brother, let's go. The young man looked at Qin Feiyong and the others with sleepy eyes and shook his head, saying, I don't want to go now. Feather Emperor sized up the young man, and his pupils shrank slightly. He transmitted his voice, Feiyong, this person is not simple. If he was simple, I wouldn't have dragged him to the Sky Cloud realm. In the future, when we face the Divine Kingdom, he will definitely be of great help. Qin Feiyong smiled secretly and went forward to pull the young man up by force, saying, What's so fun here? Let me tell you, the Sky Cloud realm is the most exciting place right now. Isn't it just a mere divine kingdom? This young master doesn't care about it at all. The young man snorted and reluctantly followed Qin Feiyong to the front of Feather Emperor. Snow Dragon was lying on the young man's shoulder and taking a nap. Snow Dragon wasn't like this in the past. He was very energetic. Why did he like to sleep so much now? It seemed that this thing was contagious. A mere divine kingdom? The corner of Feather Emperor's mouth twitched. This tone of his was really not an ordinary level of arrogance. Blood Demon said reluctantly, Brother Qin, come back more often when you have time. Don't worry. Qin Feiyong smiled slightly. No matter who he forgot, he would never forget this group of simple and kind blood demons. Feather Emperor looked at Qin Feiyong and the young man and asked, Which one of you has mastered the space-time law? Qin Feiyong looked directly at the young man, because Chu Yin said that this guy had mastered the space-time law. The young man pursed his lips and said indifferently, Where are you going? Sky Cloud Island. Qin Feiyong didn't hesitate. He must figure out Lin Yi's whereabouts. The young man waved his hand, and a space-time passage appeared. See you later. Qin Feiyang turned his head to look at Fire Python, Ghost King, and the others. He cupped his hands and smiled, then turned and stepped into the passage. Feather Emperor thought for a while and handed the badge in his hand to Fire Python, saying, "When little madman appears, give this badge to him and let him return to the Sky Cloud realm quickly." Okay. Fire Python nodded and took the badge. When Feather Emperor and the young man entered the passage quickly dissipated. "Lord Guardian, is the Divine Kingdom very strong?" Ghost King looked at Fire Python and asked. "I don't know. I have never seen the powerhouses of the Divine Kingdom. I just heard Qin Feiyang talk about the Divine Kingdom. But according to what he said, I'm afraid this Divine Kingdom is not ordinary. They may face a bitter battle. It's not only related to the safety of the Sky Cloud realm, but also the safety of our Nether King, Hell, and even the ancient world and Great Qin. In short, if they fall, the world will be finished." Fire Python was worried. "Sigh, we can only blame ourselves for being useless. We don't even have the qualifications to contribute." Blood Demon stomped his feet angrily. "Don't say that." Fire Python laughed. "Many years ago, the Blood Demon clan was the savior of the world, but now they were indeed unable to participate in this war." Chapter 3890. Sky Cloud Island. Sky Cloud Island, which had been destroyed in the battle with the golden-armored middle-aged man, had been restored. After all, this was Little Rabbit's nest. With Little Rabbit's ability, it was easy to create an island. However, at this moment, there was a pavilion on the mountain peak. There was a stone table and 4 stone stools in the pavilion. Little Rabbit and Blood Ancestor were sitting in the pavilion, one drinking wine and the other drinking tea. Swish! As Qin Feiyang and Feather Emperor appeared, Blood Ancestor got up and looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile. "You look good." "Of course I'm good after resting for so long." Qin Feiyang smiled and walked into the pavilion. He scanned the endless sea in front of him and nodded. Facing the sea, the scenery is endless. It's not enough. What a showy thing. The young man pouted and walked to Blood Ancestor's side and sat down. He snatched the divine wine from Little Rabbit's hand and gulped it down. Ah! Little Rabbit looked at the young man in shock. Blood Ancestor's mouth twitched. The young man was the first person who dared to snatch wine from Little Rabbit. He knew more about the young man than Feather Emperor, because he had already heard about the young man when he appeared in the ancient world. "What look? Isn't it just a jar of wine? I'll return it to you." The young man glanced at Little Rabbit in disdain and threw the wine jar over. "Uncle Rabbit has a bad temper." Little Rabbit jumped up and slapped the young man with its paw. But at the same time, a space-time law appeared and the young man disappeared in an instant. The next moment, he appeared in the sky above the sea. So fast? Little Rabbit's expression froze. Feather Emperor and Blood Ancestor also looked at Little Rabbit in shock, although they didn't master the space-time law. As the leaders of the human race, they naturally knew the power of the major laws like the back of their hands. At this moment, the space-time law displayed by the young man had reached the level of the ultimate profound. It was really unexpected. This mysterious young man actually mastered the ultimate profound of the strongest law. Qin Feiyang was also stunned. When he came back to his senses, he saw the young man smiling at Little Rabbit before turning around and leaving. He hurriedly asked, "Where are you going?" "To find a place to sleep." The young man answered without turning his head. "Sleep?" Qin Feiyang was speechless. Very soon, the young man disappeared from their sight. The Blood Ancestor asked suspiciously, "Feiyang, who is this person?" "I don't know." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Even you don't know?" The Blood Ancestor frowned. Qin Feiyang was the one who was most familiar with the young man. "I've asked him, but he didn't give me a single proper answer. If I tell you, you will definitely find it laughable. He said that he is the son of the god of creation. Qin Feiyang was speechless. The mouths of the Emperor of Feathers, the little rabbit, and the blood ancestor twitched. I'm the father of the god of creation. Do you believe it? Don't worry about him. That's because I've yet to sense any malice from him. They shouldn't be enemies. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sat down next to the blood ancestor. He looked at the little rabbit and frowned. Big brother, are you hiding something from me? What am I hiding from you? The little rabbit drank wine while looking at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and Lin Yi's phantasm appeared immediately. He asked, Have you seen her before? As soon as the little rabbit saw Lin Yi's phantasm, his expression suddenly became a little unnatural. He shook his head and said, No, who is she? No. Fire Python said that she came to the Sky Cloud realm. You have been guarding the Sky Cloud Island all year round. How dare you say that you haven't seen her? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. What a talkative guy. The little rabbit snorted secretly and looked at Qin Feiyang. I really haven't. Although Uncle Rabbit has been guarding this place all year round, there are times when I have to leave. What if she just entered the Sky Cloud realm when I left? The little rabbit said faintly. Is there such a coincidence? If your expression is natural, I will really believe it. Qin Feiyang sneered. The little rabbit looked at Blood Ancestor and Feather Emperor and asked, Uncle Rabbit's expression is unnatural. Naturally. It's too natural. It's obvious that you have a guilty conscience. Feather Emperor despised. You are the one who has a guilty conscience. The little rabbit glared at him fiercely. Qin Feiyang asked, So, have you really seen her? Yes. The little rabbit nodded. Where did she go? Qin Feiyang asked hurriedly. Uncle Rabbit killed her with a slap. The little rabbit said faintly. You! Qin Feiyang got up abruptly, endured the anger in his heart, and said angrily, I am not joking with you. This person is very important to me. How important? The little rabbit was curious. Qin Feiyang paused and said, In short, she is very important. Compared to your wife, who is more important? The little rabbit asked. Are you done? One of them is my wife and the other is my sister. Can you compare them together? Of course, they are equally important. Tell me quickly. Qin Feiyang was extremely annoyed. I see. Little Rabbit came to a sudden realization and teased. Uncle Rabbit thought that you had other thoughts towards this childhood sweetheart of yours. Childhood sweetheart? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. The little rabbit even knows this? Wait a minute. This bastard not only met Lin Yi, but also chatted with Lin Yi. She even knows my relationship with Lin Yi. Since she knows their relationship, the little rabbit will definitely take care of Lin Yi more or less. In other words, Lin Yi should be in no danger now. Feather Emperor glanced at the little rabbit and asked, Feiyang, is this girl really your childhood sweetheart? Qin Feiyang nodded. Ancestor Blood asked curiously again, Have you two done anything beyond friendship? Something beyond friendship? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. A row of black lines appeared on his forehead. He said angrily, You are already so old. Why are your thoughts still so dirty? How can you say that? You have no respect for your elders. Ancestor Blood's face turned black. Qin Feiyang was speechless. You are allowed to have dirty thoughts, but others are not allowed to say it? The little rabbit looked at Qin Feiyang, rolled her eyes, and asked Feather Emperor, When you evacuated this time, did you see this girl? No. Feather Emperor shook his head. I didn't either. Could it be? Could it be? The little rabbit was surprised. Qin Feiyang was shocked when he heard it. What could it be? What could it be? Can you not scare me? Sigh. Old 3, to tell you the truth, I did take care of her and asked her to go directly to the eastern continent to find you, but I really don't know if there were any accidents on the way." The little rabbit shook her head and sighed. Qin Feiyang's face turned pale when he heard it. When he evacuated, he didn't see Lin Yi. He didn't know where she was now. Could it be that an accident really happened? A hint of playfulness flashed in the little rabbit's eyes. She comforted. "Big Brother understands your feelings, but the dead can't be resurrected. Take it easy." Qin Feiyang returned to the stone bench weakly. Ancestor Blood and Feather Emperor looked at each other. Lin Yi was indeed important to Qin Feiyang. Feather Emperor glared at the little rabbit and said, "Since you know their relationship, why didn't you personally escort her to the eastern continent?" "Do you think Uncle Rabbit is a saint?" The little rabbit glared at him. Feather Emperor said angrily, "Isn't this a piece of cake for you?" "Yes, but does Uncle Rabbit have this obligation?" the little rabbit asked. Feather Emperor was speechless for a while. It seemed that there was no such obligation. Qin Feiyang sighed deeply and shook his head. "Old ancestor, don't blame Big Brother. After all, he is such a cold person." "I'm cold? In the beginning, who gave you the way to the eastern continent? Who has been protecting the princess of the divine kingdom and the land of buried gods? And who was it that repeatedly saved you when you were in danger? Uncle Rabbit has seen through you. You are more White-Eyed Wolf than White-Eyed Wolf. You are simply heartless." The little rabbit was unhappy and scolded Qin Feiyang fiercely. "I didn't say anything to you. Why are you saying so much?" Qin Feiyang said angrily. "Nonsense. With your current attitude, who would feel comfortable seeing it? Besides, I can give her directions and let her go to the eastern continent. That is already a great mercy. Whether she can survive or not depends on her own ability. Don't tell me you want Uncle Rabbit to protect her." The little rabbit snorted coldly. Okay. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's leave it to fate." Qin Feiyang waved his hand again and again. He was quite irritated. "I can't always think of the bad side of everything. What if Lin Yi is hiding somewhere and meditating in seclusion? Perhaps she has changed her appearance and blended into the crowd. Even if Feather Emperor and the little rabbit saw her, they would definitely not recognize her." Feather Emperor glared at the little rabbit, raised his hand, and patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder to comfort him. Then he said, "The creatures of each continent have been arranged. The people of the 3 major races have also returned to their respective nests. Now, only the people of Demon Palace, Heavenly Palace, Divine Palace, and Rogue Cultivator Alliance are left. You can arrange these people yourself." "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang frowned and asked, "What about the people of the land of buried gods? How did you arrange them?" "The door of the divine kingdom was in the land of buried gods, so they definitely couldn't set foot in the land of buried gods." Feather Emperor said, "I have discussed this matter with the little rabbit. The people of the land of buried gods will stay in the heavenly cloud sea in the future. When you return to the Black Tortoise world, send old Qing and the others out." "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at the blood ancestor. "Ancestor, when the time comes, I will have to trouble you to help me set up a 5,000 years a day time array in the Demon Palace, Heavenly Palace, Divine Palace, Rogue Cultivator Alliance, and the major cities. Only by doing so could the overall strength of the Heavenly Cloud realm be effectively improved. This is a small matter. Now, although everything in the Heavenly Cloud realm has returned to normal, because of the oppression of the Divine Kingdom, everyone is in a bad mood. In short, in everyone's hearts, there is always a sense of panic. If this feeling is not eliminated, I am afraid that even if a 5,000 years a day time array is set up, they will not be able to calm down and cultivate." The blood ancestor said worriedly, "The younger generation of the Divine Kingdom hasn't arrived yet?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes." The blood ancestor nodded. Qin Feiyong frowned. It had been more than half a month, but they still hadn't come out. What was going on? However, the problem mentioned by the blood ancestor was indeed worthy of attention. He had to think of a way to deal with this panic as soon as possible. Chapter 3891. In the pavilion, the refreshing fragrance of the tea and the gentle sea breeze made people feel relaxed and happy. Qin Feiyong held a teacup and sipped the tea while pondering. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as he looked at the blood ancestor, the Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit. He smiled and said, "Actually, the best way is to accept the challenge from the Divine Kingdom." Accept the challenge from the Divine Kingdom? The Feather Emperor was stunned. That's right. Why is everyone panicking? It's because the people from the Divine Kingdom are too strong. Even leaders like you don't dare to face the Divine Kingdom head-on. So there's a shadow in your heart. As the saying goes, whoever tied the bell should untie it. To solve this problem, we have to start from the root. Qin Feiyong explained. The blood ancestor pondered for a while and said suspiciously, "You mean when the geniuses from the Divine Kingdom arrive, we will immediately accept their challenge?" "No, they won't challenge us. We will take the initiative to challenge them. And we must win the first battle, because only by winning can we boost morale and stimulate everyone's fighting spirit. Only by winning can we shatter the shadow in everyone's heart and stand up again." Qin Feiyong said, his eyes shining. "That's a good idea. However, I'm afraid that the Divine Kingdom has the same idea." The blood ancestor frowned. "That's inevitable. The geniuses from the Divine Kingdom will definitely want to take us down a notch and further suppress our morale." Qin Feiyong nodded and smiled. The Feather Emperor asked, "So, who will fight in the first battle?" Little Rabbit pointed at Qin Feiyong and said indifferently, "Nonsense, of course it's him." "I can't." Qin Feiyong waved his hand. "Don't tell me you don't have the confidence." Little Rabbit raised her eyebrows. "There's no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken." Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. Little Rabbit was stunned. How could he treat the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom as little chicks? How domineering. For the first battle, we can't let Qin Feiyong fight. After all, he is our trump card. The blood ancestor chuckled. The Little Rabbit looked at the blood ancestor with confusion in her eyes. What kind of tricks did Qin Feiyong have up his sleeves? Even the blood ancestor was praising him? How about this? White-Eyed Wolf, Fire Dance, and Mask de Jura are all in seclusion to fuse with their inheritances. The little lunatic is also in the Infernal King's hell. He can't come back for the time being. Now only Qin Feiyong, Yun Xiang, Li Feng, and Long Chen are left. Long Chen definitely won't make a move easily. Qin Feiyong also needs to conserve his strength. For the first battle, why don't we let Li Feng and Yun Xiang fight? The blood ancestor suggested. Sure, both of them have grasped ultimate, profound meanings. Besides, apart from the ultimate profound meaning, Yun Xiang has also comprehended several other profound meanings. Not to mention Li Feng. He has two ultimate profound meanings and the puppet true body. It won't be a problem for him to fight against four of them. The Feather Emperor nodded. Little Rabbit pondered for a while and nodded in agreement. No, if we let them fight, the chances of winning won't be high. However, Qin Feiyong disagreed. The chances of winning won't be high? The Feather Emperor and the other two looked at Qin Feiyong in confusion. With Li Feng and Yun Xiang's strength and means, it was impossible for them to lose. Back in the land of buried gods, Yun Xiang and Li Feng fought with the old man from the Divine Kingdom. The old man knows their strength like the back of his hand. Moreover, the old man regards them as the super geniuses of the Sky Cloud realm. Qin Feiyong smiled. Super geniuses? The Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit were stunned. It's like this. At that time, the old man praised Yunziang and Li Feng quite a bit. He thought that they were the strongest of the younger generation of the Sky Cloud realm. I reckon that Yunziang and Li Feng's names have already spread to the ears of the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom. The Blood Ancestor shook his head and laughed. The true geniuses of the Sky Cloud realm were still keeping a low profile. I see. The Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit suddenly understood. Since the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom already know the strength and means of Li Feng and Yunziang, they will definitely think of a way to deal with them in advance. Therefore, I don't agree with letting them fight in the first battle. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then do you have anyone else in mind? The Blood Ancestor asked. Qin Feiyang turned his head to look at the sea ahead and murmured if he hadn't left, he would have been the most suitable candidate. Him, the Blood Ancestor, and the other two were stunned. Then they realized that Qin Feiyang must be talking about that mysterious young man. If this young man could fight, it would indeed be good, because this young man always gave people an unfathomable feeling, and his whereabouts were always uncertain. Unfortunately, he had no intention of participating in this battle at all. To be honest, in fact, everyone envied Mu Qing's life. She was like a wild crane, free and unrestrained. This matter is not urgent. Let's wait until the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom arrive. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and asked, "What about Long Qin?" "He has returned to the dragons," the Blood Ancestor said. Qin Feiyang said, "Then do the three clans have any complaints about the deaths of Dragon King and the other two?" "Of course, but the three of them died in the hands of Long Qin. Long Qin didn't hide this matter. Even if they hate him, they hate Long Qin more. As for us, we are at most considered as accomplices." The Feather Emperor smiled faintly, not caring at all. The deaths of the three are not to be regretted. It doesn't matter even if they hate him. But the dragons and Qiling clans are now led by Long Qin and Qi Shaoyan. But the Feng people, Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. With Feng Ho's death, the Feng people were akin to a group of dragons without a leader. Because Bing Changtian was also dead, and the leader of the Feng people had also left the Feng people. The elders and reclusive old antiques of the Feng people were definitely not capable of leading the Feng people. You want Huo Wenchang and Huo Wu to return? The Blood Ancestor asked. I can't decide whether they stay or leave. It's up to them. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Indeed, you can't interfere in this matter. After all, the Feng people have caused too much harm to them. The Feather Emperor nodded. Fine, I'll go to the Black Tortoise world first. Qin Feiyang finished the tea in his cup in one gulp, put down the teacup, and vanished. Old villain, you have to give us an explanation today. Apart from the ultimate profundity of the law of karma, what else is this kid hiding? The little rabbit stared at the Blood Ancestor with a ferocious gaze, as though she wanted to eat him alive. The Feather Emperor also looked at the Blood Ancestor expectantly. The Blood Ancestor, on the other hand, was calmly sipping on his tea. This was the Longjing tea he had picked in the Black Tortoise World's tea garden. It tasted pretty good. Are you going to tell me or not? The little rabbit roared. What can you do if I don't tell you? The Blood Ancestor chuckled, infuriating the little rabbit. The Black Tortoise World. The sovereign's divine weapons were all repairing their damaged bodies in the land of origin. Qin Feiyang stood in the air above the herb field. His senses stretched out endlessly, allowing him to see everything clearly. Everyone's law miniatures had already fused, and they were all in seclusion to comprehend the profundity of the law. The white-eyed wolf, Princess Hoofing, and the masked Azura, who were in the process of fusing their inheritances, were all emitting terrifying auras. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang was stunned. The next moment, he appeared in the tea garden. He saw Huo Wenchang sitting alone in the tea garden, listening to the birds chirping around him while sipping a pot of fragrant tea. He looked extremely comfortable. "Uncle." Qin Feiyong smiled. Hu Wenchang opened his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyong with a smile. "You're back!" Qin Feiyong nodded and sat opposite Hu Wenchang. He asked, "Are you used to it?" "I've never been so comfortable. I'm really light with nothing to do." Hu Wenchang poured a cup of tea and handed it to Qin Feiyong. "As long as Uncle likes it. Have you fused with the law miniatures I gave you?" Qin Feiyong took the teacup and asked. "Yes. I haven't thanked you properly for this. Thank you very much." Hu Wenchang nodded, his face full of gratitude. Although he used to be the patriarch of the Fire Phoenix clan, the law miniatures were also a divine object that he dreamed of. "You're welcome." Qin Feiyong waved his hand and took a sip of tea. He hesitated and sighed. "There's something I think I still need to tell you." "What is it?" Hu Wenchang was suspicious. Qin Feiyong briefly told him about the death of the Dragon King and the other two. Hu Wenchang's face suddenly stiffened when he heard this. His mood that had settled down with great difficulty was once again stirred up. Qin Feiyong sighed secretly. Although Hu Wenchang had left the Feng people with Hu Wenchang's sense of responsibility, he would definitely worry about the future of the Feng people. Frankly speaking, compared to people like Bing Changtian, Hu Wenchang was many times better. He really didn't understand what this Feng Ho was thinking. After a long time, Hu Wenchang calmed down the emotions in his heart and asked, "In that case, the Phoenix clan is now without a leader." "Yes." Qin Feiyong nodded. "Maybe this is karma." Hu Wenchang sighed deeply. If Feng Ho hadn't joined the Dragon King and the Lord of Kailan to sneak attack the human sovereign and the others and seal the princess of the divine kingdom back then, how could she have died because of this? The so-called karma principle was the principle of the cycle of karma. Qin Feiyong said, "I know you must be worried about the Feng people, uncle. So I'm telling you now, and I respect your decision." Hu Wenchang was slightly stunned and smiled. "Do you think I'll go back to the Feng people?" "Yes." Qin Feiyong nodded. "My dear nephew, the human heart is very complicated. Although Feng Ho died because of the mistakes she made back then, although she was killed by Long Chen and had nothing to do with me and Wu, the Feng people won't think so. They will blame Feng Ho's death on us, because they will say that if we didn't take away the Dominator divine weapon of the Feng people, how could Feng Ho be killed so easily? Besides, Feng Ho's death also has something to do with you. Now that we are with you, they will naturally think that Wu, and I are accomplices. So if we go back now, not only will they not accept us, but they will also slander us, saying that we instigated you to kill Feng Ho so that you can take the opportunity to seize the power of the Feng people." Hu Wenchang waved his hand. Qin Feiyong couldn't help but admire him. He was indeed the leader of a family. He could see the problem so clearly. Chapter 3892. Now we can't go back. Otherwise, we will continue to be wronged. I don't mind, but I can't bear to see Wu being hurt by her people again. So I have to wait for the elders of the Feng people to take the initiative to come to us and ask us to go back. Hu Wenchang said, "After all, you still care about the Feng people." Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. "I don't want to care, but I can't. After all, I am a member of the Feng people. There are some responsibilities that I can't shirk. Otherwise, my conscience will always be condemned. Let's talk about it later. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. The culprits, Bing Changtian and Feng Ho, have been killed one after another. No matter how deep the grudge is, it should disappear." Hu Wenchang sighed. "All right, no matter what you do, I will support you unconditionally." Qin Feiyong smiled. "Thank you." Hu Wenchang was grateful. "No need." Qin Feiyong waved his hand and smiled. Then you can continue. I will go and take a look elsewhere. Okay. Hu Wenchang nodded. After Qin Feiyong left, Hu Wenchang looked up at the sky and muttered, Feng Ho, if you knew this would happen, why didn't you regret it? You didn't hurt yourself, but the entire Feng people. Soul Ceiling Valley. This place was now famous in the Black Tortoise world. No one was willing to set foot here, but at this moment, there was a woman who was suppressed in the Soul Ceiling Valley. This person was Bing Running. Obviously, the person who suppressed her was the demon ancestor. Qin Feiyong, you damn bastard, let me out! Seeing Qin Feiyong appear in the sky above the Soul Ceiling Valley, Bing Running's face was ashen. She immediately shouted angrily, Do you still think that I am attracted to your beauty? Qin Feiyong smiled mockingly. This was definitely a place that could make people collapse. Bing Running could hold on until now. She was quite powerful. You are not human. You are a beast. Bing Running clenched her fists. In the beginning, Qin Feiyong did not kill her. She did have such thoughts. Who would have thought that when they arrived at the Black Tortoise world, they would be faced with a calamity? Not only had his fighting soul been snatched away, but he had also been suppressed in this disgusting place. It was worse than death. Don't scold me. The one suppressing you is the fiend ancestor. What does that have to do with me? Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. Aren't you all in cahoots? Bing Running roared. You're wrong about that. I'm really not with him. However, his actions are very much to my liking. I'm here to tell you a piece of good news. Feng Ho is dead. Qin Feiyong chuckled. What? Bing Running's eyes trembled. She was still waiting for Feng Ho to save her, because among all the Feng people, only Feng Ho had the ability to save her from Qin Feiyong. Who would have thought that she would receive such grievous news? Enjoy it. Qin Feiyong smiled and turned around to leave. Don't go. Please let me go. I beg you. I'll do anything you want me to do. Even if I have to be your concubine or maid, I'm willing to serve you. Bing Running quickly cried out with a pleading look on her face. I think you're dirty. Qin Feiyong laughed out loud without looking back. Then he disappeared without a trace in an instant. It would be too easy to kill such a woman. He had to torture her slowly to vent the hatred in his heart. Half an hour later, other than the masked Shura who was integrating the inheritance, everyone else was called out by Qin Feiyong. Elder Hua, He Zhongtian, the alliance leader, the three giants of the Heavenly Hall, Yun Ziang, Azure Dragon, etc. Qin Feiyong briefly explained the situation and said with a smile, That's it. You can decide whether to stay or leave. In the end, no one wanted to stay. Although the cultivation environment of the Black Tortoise world was very good, it was still Qin Feiyong's territory. Moreover, people like Elder Hua and the alliance leader had to consider their disciples. As the people closest to Qin Feiyong, they knew that if they wanted to stay, Qin Feiyong would definitely welcome them. However, there was no other way. They had their own responsibilities. The Order of the Four Continents needed them to maintain. Before leaving, Qin Feiyong also returned the Red Sword and Golden Crow Pearl to the Demon Hall and Heavenly Hall. Although the giants of the four continents had returned to their original state and were controlled by the four major forces, the demon ancestor also kept his promise and personally went to the four continents to set up a 5,000-year time array for the four major forces. With this time array, in addition to Elder Hua and the others, who had opened the door of potential and merged with the laws, their strength would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. On this day, Yun Ziang arrived at the temple and fought a bloody battle with He Zhongtian, shocking everyone. Although He Zhongtian had already joined Qin Feiyong, the grudge between the He and Yun families was too deep. If he didn't settle it personally, Yun Ziang wouldn't be able to feel at ease. However, he didn't bully He Zhongtian and didn't use his ultimacy or sovereign divine weapon. Even so, Hizhongtian still lost miserably. However, in the end, Yun Ziyang didn't kill him. From now on, the grudge between our families is written off. He crushed Hizhongtian's body with one palm and left after saying that. Hizhongtian also heaved a sigh of relief. In the past few years in the Black Tortoise world, although Yunzing hadn't come to find him, he knew that Yunzing definitely wouldn't let it go. Especially after understanding Yunziyang's current strength, he felt even more nervous. The ultimate ultimacy was something that he couldn't touch at all. If Yun Ziyang wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. Not to mention Yun Ziyang. Even Yun Zhongtian, who had been cultivating by the little rabbit's side for many years, was now strong enough to crush him. So, to be able to use the destruction of his body in exchange for Yun Ziyang's forgiveness, in his opinion, it was already a great deal. Of course, he knew even better. The biggest reason why Yun Ziyang could forgive him was because of Qin Feiyang. If it wasn't for Qin Feiyang's face, even if he knelt down and begged for mercy, Yun Ziyang wouldn't let him go. In the blink of an eye, another half a month passed. The gate to the divine kingdom was still suspended in the sky above the core area of the land of the buried gods. But now, there wasn't a single living thing in the land of the buried gods. Even ferocious beasts didn't dare to step in. However, there were many spies hidden at the two entrances of the land of the buried gods. These spies were naturally sent by the various forces in order to monitor the situation in the land of the buried gods. On this day, Qin Feiyang appeared from the Black Tortoise world with Li Feng. Li Feng was now following Qin Feiyang closely. Wherever Qin Feiyang went, he would go. Those who didn't know would think that he was Qin Feiyang's bodyguard. During this period of time, the blood ancestor, the little rabbit, and the feather emperor had been staying together. They either sat on Sky Cloud Island to drink and chat or wandered around. In short, they were in a very leisurely state. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng appeared. After greeting the three of them, they opened a space-time tunnel and prepared to leave. "Where are you guys going?" The little rabbit twisted the wine pot and asked. "Dragons." Qin Feiyang said. "Why are we going to dragons?" The little rabbit was stunned and puzzled. "Of course, we're going to find Long Qin and take back what belongs to us." Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. "Emperor's sword?" the blood ancestor asked. "N." Qin Feiyang nodded. Back then in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, he had already agreed to return the Emperor's sword, Thousand Phoenix Mountain, Thieving Heaven Realm, and the purple gold Dragon Ball to him. But Long Qin hadn't returned it yet. He had no choice but to personally go to the dragons. It's good to get it back as soon as possible. The blood ancestor nodded and asked, "Do you need us to cheer you on?" "Cheer me on?" Qin Feiyang was speechless. Even if Long Qin had the heavenly god sword, he wouldn't dare to confront him directly. He said indifferently, "You guys can relax here and bask in the sun." Just as he finished speaking, Qin Feiyang patted his head and looked at the Feather Emperor. "Old ancestor, I encountered a sovereign weapon in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. He has some connections with you." "What sovereign weapon?" The Feather Emperor was suspicious. Qin Feiyang entered the Black Tortoise world and summoned the green cauldron from the land of Source. Then he brought the green cauldron in front of the Feather Emperor. N. The Feather Emperor looked at the green cauldron suspiciously. "It seems that too much time has passed and you can't remember. Back then, in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, I was surrounded by people from the three major races. In the end, you appeared and saved me from their hands." The green cauldron explained. "Let me think." When the Feather Emperor heard this, he lowered his head and pondered. After a long time, he suddenly said, I remember. So it's you. I really forgot. It's been too long." "You forgot, but it didn't. These are in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. If it helps, I won't be able to subdue sovereign weapons like the Ice Phoenix sword." Qin Feiyang smiled. I see. The Feather Emperor nodded and said with a smile, "This is fate." Then he looked at the green cauldron and said suspiciously, "But I seem to remember that you don't want to leave the sky, Belle Divine Treasure? Why did you come out with Qin Feiyang this time?" "It's a long story." The green cauldron sighed. "Then you guys can talk slowly," Qin Feiyang said. Okay. Speaking of which, we can be considered old friends." The Feather Emperor nodded with a smile. "Right." Qin Feiyang patted his head again and looked at the Feather Emperor suspiciously. "The Princess of the Divine Kingdom said that the 3,000 clones are a secret technique of the purple gold divine dragon. How did it end up in your hands?" "Of course, she gave it to me personally," the Feather Emperor said. "In other words, the Princess of the Divine Kingdom also has the 3,000 clones?" Qin Feiyang was bewildered. "In the past she did, but not now." The Feather Emperor shook his head. "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang didn't understand. "No matter what divine technique it is, there are only two ways to give it to someone. One is to pass it down. The other is to engrave the divine technique and give it to the other party." Back then, when facing the sneak attack of the Dragon King's group, in a moment of desperation, sister-in-law directly engraved the 3,000 clones and gave them to me. This method would cause her to lose the 3,000 clones. The Feather Emperor explained. "Regarding this matter, you have a huge responsibility. Do you know that?" The Blood Ancestor snorted coldly. "What responsibility?" The Feather Emperor was puzzled. "These 3,000 clones were originally left for Qin Batian. But what about you? You insisted on creating a divine treasure to test him. In the end, the demon ancestor got it. If not for Qin Feiyang snatching it away by chance, how are you going to compensate for this loss?" The Blood Ancestor was dissatisfied. The Feather Emperor smiled embarrassedly. "All these are not important. Even if I didn't snatch it away from Zhuge Mingyang back then, given the demon ancestor's current personality, he would still give it to me. However, these 3,000 clones, should I pass it down widely?" Qin Feiyang said. Chapter 3893 Legacy. Feather Emperor and the other two were stunned. "Yes. Just like the legacy I left behind in Great Qin. My younger brother, Qin Haotian, has already obtained the legacy of the 3,000 incarnations." Qin Feiyang said, "This is a good idea. As long as everyone can obtain the legacy of the 3,000 incarnations, our overall strength will undoubtedly increase by several times." Li Feng's eyes lit up. He looked at Qin Feiyang and chuckled. "Qin Dage, you must give me a slot. You have the true body of the puppet. Are you still not satisfied?" The Blood Ancestor rolled his eyes at Li Feng. He looked at Qin Feiyang and shook his head. "I object to this matter." "I object too." Feather Emperor nodded. "Why?" Qin Feiyang was puzzled. "The current situation is already chaotic enough. What if someone obtains the legacy of the 3,000 incarnations and becomes overconfident and goes against us? Wouldn't that be adding insult to injury? Moreover, not everyone can inherit a secret technique like this. It depends on luck," Feather Emperor said. "The people around me can be trusted. Such a thing shouldn't happen, right?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "We have to be cautious. Besides, if everyone has the 3,000 incarnations, what advantage do you have? Why should everyone treat you as their master? Therefore, sometimes one has to be selfish. One can't be generous and give everything to others." Feather Emperor said, "What I'm most worried about is if we accidentally fall into the hands of the Feng people, dragons, and Qilins. Can you imagine the consequences? Therefore, don't do anything risky," the Blood Ancestor reminded. "Makes sense. It's better to be safe than sorry. Unless you have the means to restrain the 3,000 incarnations," Uncle Rabbit also objects. After all, even the purple gold divine dragon race is unwilling to pass it down to outsiders. One can imagine how important the 3,000 incarnations are. Little Rabbit chimed in. All right, Qin Feiyang nodded. These concerns weren't without reason. He would rather work harder than take such a risk. One more thing, Qin Feiyang looked at the Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit and said, Why do I feel that the heavenly cloud sea and the land of buried gods only have 8 sovereign divine weapons? Yeah, what's wrong? The Little Rabbit nodded and asked suspiciously, The dragons, the Foam people, the Qilin clan, they all had 10 sovereign divine weapons. Why do you only have 8? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. The Feather Emperor said, It's because some of our sovereign divine weapons died in the battle against the experts of the divine kingdom. That's right. Back then, we all had sovereign weapons of our own. However, in the end, only the Renhuang sword survived. However, even if it survived, it is now damaged. The blood ancestor sighed. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization and asked curiously, Where is the beast god of the heavenly cloud sea? Why haven't I seen it before? Beast god! The Little Rabbit, the Feather Emperor, and the blood ancestor looked at each other with sadness on their faces. What happened? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. The Little Rabbit said, Actually, the beast god also died in the hands of the Lord of the Divine Kingdom. What? Qin Feiyang and Li Feng looked at each other with shock. The divine beast had died? Back then, the princess of the Divine Kingdom shattered the gate of the Divine Kingdom and forced the experts of the Divine Kingdom to leave. This angered the Lord of the Divine Kingdom. When the gate of the Divine Kingdom collapsed, the Lord of the Divine Kingdom personally came and attacked. At that time, the beast god was the strongest. In order to protect us, he fought against the Lord of the Divine Kingdom and forced the Lord of the Divine Kingdom to retreat at the cost of his life. The Feather Emperor said. Qin Feiyang was also heartbroken when he heard this. That battle back then was really tragic. He asked, Then what about the beast god's punishment? It's Uncle Rabbit's method. The Little Rabbit said indifferently. Your method? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Now you know how much Uncle Rabbit cares about you. He has always been protecting you and Frenzy, White-Eyed Wolf. The Little Rabbit snorted. Qin Feiyang laughed dryly. Go quickly. We must get the sword of the human sovereign back. As for the other half of the sword of the human sovereign, we must also get it back from the Lord of the Divine Kingdom. After all, this is the only thing left in the world by my brother. The Feather Emperor sighed. Don't worry. Qin Feiyang nodded his head heavily. Then he led Li Feng and stepped into the space-time tunnel. The Yin Demon Land, the inner area. This place was still filled with Yin demon power that couldn't be dissipated. Swoosh! Qin Feiyang and Li Feng directly landed in the sky above the inner area. The surrounding Yin demon power immediately surged into their bodies like a tide. Li Feng waved his hand and the law of space-time rolled out. Now his law of space-time had reached the level of the ultimate profound. Even the Yin demon power in the inner area couldn't break through the defense of the law of space-time. Thinking back to the situation back then, it was really a world of difference. Back then, Qin Feiyang and the others broke into this place and could only rely on frenzy to stop the erosion of the Yin demon power. After a little sigh, the two stepped forward and went straight to the core area. Qin Dage, I heard that there were a lot of law inheritances here in the past? Li Feng's eyes lit up. Yes, my law of destruction was obtained here. Qin Feiyang nodded. I wonder if there are any left now. Li Feng chuckled. Probably not. Qin Feiyang shook his head. When the dragons retreated, they definitely wouldn't leave out the inheritances here. Sure enough, along the way, they didn't encounter any inheritance. But then again, the heritage of the 3 races was really extraordinary. Although the inheritances here didn't have the ultimate profound, they had the supreme profound. In the sky cloud realm, the inheritance of the Supreme Profound was a great fortune that countless people would fight for. If there wasn't a deep foundation, who would be willing to do this? Finally, Qin Feiyang and Li Feng rushed to a barrier. Inside the barrier, there was a majestic mountain range. It was completely different from the desolation of the inner area. The mountains and rivers were beautiful. The vegetation was lush, and a magnificent waterfall fell from the high mountains, like a fairyland. Li Feng glanced at the barrier and laughed. It seems that they are also afraid of the Yin demon power entering the dragon nest. That's for sure. Once the Yin demon power enters the dragon nest will be destroyed in an instant. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and raised his hand to slap the barrier. And the barrier didn't even tremble in the slightest. Wait, this aura, it seems to be the heavenly god sword. Qin Feiyang frowned. The barrier set up by the heavenly god sword, with his current strength, without activating 3,000 incarnations, he really couldn't shake it. This Long Qin was really vigilant. He actually let the heavenly god sword set up a barrier to protect the dragon nest. Shua! Just as Qin Feiyang was about to activate 3,000 incarnations to forcibly break the barrier, a figure descended in front of the barrier. It was Long Qin. The barrier was set up by the heavenly god sword. If someone tried to break the barrier, the heavenly god sword and Long Qin would naturally be able to sense it at the first moment. I was wondering who it was. It turned out to be Brother Qin. Long Qin chuckled. With a wave of his hand, Qin Feiyang and Li Feng immediately appeared in the barrier. A majestic essence and vitality suddenly surged. If the inner area was hell, then the dragon nest was undoubtedly heaven. Then do you welcome it? Qin Feiyang glanced at the mountains in front of him and asked with a smile. Of course you're welcome. Long Qin smiled and rose into the air. He brought Qin Feiyang and Li Feng to the central area of the dragon nest. What? Qin Feiyang came to our dragon nest? Who gave him the guts to barge into our territory? Soon, the dragons knew that Qin Feiyang had entered the dragon nest, and each of them was filled with righteous indignation. What are you doing? All of you, back off! Long Qin shouted. Long Qin, he's the enemy of the dragons. A reclusive old antique shouted. Long Qin said in a deep voice, I don't want to repeat this sentence a second time. In the current situation, there's no distinction between friend and foe. We're all comrades. If you have the time to come here to join in the fun, you might as well go back and train hard to fight the strong enemy of the Divine Kingdom. But Lord Dragon King, someone shouted unwillingly. Long Qin said, I was the one who killed the Dragon King. If you want revenge, then come at me. This time, the dragons fell silent. Long Qin shouted, If you don't have the guts, then get lost immediately. Don't embarrass yourself here. There was a great majesty in his words. The people of the dragon tribe who had gathered around finally left with a belly full of resentment. You're so impressive now. Li Feng chuckled. Long Qin shook his head and smiled bitterly. I don't want to care about them at all, but there's no other way. They've taken care of me, my mother, and my sister all these years. I can't bear to sit back and do nothing. That's your character. Qin Feiyang nodded. If it weren't for Long Qin's character, he wouldn't have been able to get along with Long Qin so peacefully. Because in Long Qin's heart, there was compassion and righteousness. It was completely different from the selfish and cold Long Zun. Sometimes he couldn't help but doubt. Was this Long Qin the biological son of Long Zun and Ice Dragon? If it was Ice Dragon, it didn't seem to be so kind. Sigh. People with our character are usually at a disadvantage. Long Qin shook his head. Brother, why did you let him in? Suddenly, a clear voice came from not far away. Following closely, a woman wearing a white dress stepped on the air. Her skin was whiter than snow, and her facial features were exquisite. However, Qin Feiyang didn't have a good impression of this woman. Because she was Long Chen's sister, the former ancient world's dragon's princess. Similarly, this princess dragons also had a deep-seated hatred for Qin Feiyang. Not only was she repeatedly schemed against by Qin Feiyang in the ancient world, but she was also beaten up badly by Qin Feiyang when she was in the underworld king's hell. Even back then, if she didn't leave her soul on the divine Dragon Island before entering the underworld king's hell, she would have become a skeleton by now. We've been old friends for so many years. What are you doing? Long Chen was displeased. Who's old friends with him? The princess dragons snorted coldly, her eyes full of disgust. I know myself. I really can't afford to be friends with him. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Chapter 3894. Since you know you can't climb up the social ladder, why are you here? Princess Dragons's face was cold. She's not stupid. On the contrary, she's a very smart woman. She knew that Qin Feiyang's words seemed to be complimenting her, but in fact he was mocking her. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. I can't help it. Who asked you to be Ice Dragon's daughter? Of course, I have to get close to you and see if I can get some benefits? Then I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Even if I let a dog benefit, I won't let you benefit. Princess Dragon sneered. Your Royal Highness's hobby is a bit special. All right, since your Royal Highness likes dogs, then live with dogs. But I'm really envious. I don't know which dog will benefit in the future to be able to marry a beauty like you and walk to the peak of a dog's life. Speaking of which, do you have a dog here? If you don't have one, I'll go outside and get one for you. Qin Feiyang's face was full of ridicule. What do you mean? Princess Dragons was a little stunned. Long Chen and Li Feng also had a puzzled look. Live with a dog? Walk to the peak of a dog's life? But soon, the siblings and Li Feng understood what was going on. Long Chen's face suddenly turned black. It's just a quarrel. Is there a need to be so ruthless? Princess Dragons gritted her teeth. How dare he humiliate her like this? Li Feng held back a smile on his face. Qin Feiyang said innocently, Isn't this what you said? You'd rather let a dog benefit than me? To be honest, although you look okay, I'm really not that interested in you. You bastard. What I mean is, even if there are benefits, I won't let you benefit. What do you want? Why are your thoughts so dirty? Princess Dragons roared in exasperation. You're talking about this? I thought you were talking about your body. Sorry, it's a serious misunderstanding. Qin Feiyang looked at Princess Dragons and quickly waved his hand apologetically. Brother, look at him. Princess Dragons hugged Long Chen's arm with a look of grievance. Cough. Long Chen dryly coughed and looked at Qin Feiyang. Brother Qin, this is your fault. Although my sister is a little rude and unreasonable, you can attack her. Yes. It's my fault. I really misunderstood her meaning. Qin Feiyang's words. Come, I'm unreasonable? The dragon princess was stunned and said angrily, Brother, are you speaking up for me? It'll be fine after a while. Long Chen's expression darkened. You. Princess Dragons stomped her feet in anger. Long Chen glanced around and looked at a giant mountain on the left. He smiled and said, Brother Qin, let's go to the top of that mountain and sit for a while. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded. The two walked over side by side. Li Feng followed. Princess Dragons looked at Qin Feiyang's back. Her eyes flashed with a cold light, and she snorted, I want to see what you want to discuss. Then he followed him silently. On the other side, Silver Dragon Clan's territory, a white-haired old woman holding a walking stick walked into a cave, looked at a silver-haired woman sitting inside, and said respectfully, Your Highness, Qin Feiyang has come to our dragon nest. This silver-haired woman was the little princess of the dragons, Qin Feiyang. The little princess was stunned and asked suspiciously, "Why did he come to our dragon nest?" "I don't know. He seems to be looking for Long Chin." The white-haired old woman shook her head. The little princess of the dragon's eyes flashed and murmured, "It seems that his relationship with Long Chin is not ordinary." "Not necessarily. Although Long Chin and Qin Feiyang seem to be enemies, Long Chen's mother, Long Zun, and his sister, Long Qin, have always hated Qin Feiyang." The old woman shook her head. The little princess of the dragons said with a smile, "After all, it's the hatred of the extermination of the clan. It's normal to hate Qin Feiyang." The grudge between Long Zun and Qin Feiyang was not known by many dragons, and this little princess was one of them. Speaking of which, the relationship between Qin Feiyang and Long Qin is really thought-provoking. They clearly have a deep hatred, but in the end, they get along like friends. I really don't understand what kind of people are they to be able to let go of such hatred. The white-haired old woman was puzzled. "Let go? That's impossible," Li Tianlan said. "If it weren't for the arrival of the Divine Kingdom, Long Qin and Qin Feiyang would have already started fighting." The little princess of the dragons waved her hand. This was true. If it weren't for the appearance of the Divine Kingdom, the person Qin Feiyang would have to deal with now would definitely be Long Qin. The white-haired old woman hesitated. "Now the eldest prince and Long Qin are so close. Do we still have a chance?" Long Chen's status in the dragon nest is equivalent to Dragon King, and the eldest prince of the dragons has been following Long Qin all these years, and looking at Long Chen's usual attitude, he also takes care of the eldest prince of the dragons. So now they have to consider this layer of interests. Whether the Dragon King is alive or Long Qin is in power, we can't do it ourselves. However, no matter how good the relationship between my brother and Long Qin is, it has no effect on Qin Feiyang. If he wants to kill him, he can still kill him. The little princess of the dragons smiled faintly. "But will Qin Feiyang continue to help us?" According to Long Qin, Qin Feiyang said that when the Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Master are dead, the past grudges will be written off. The white-haired old woman frowned. "There's no hurry. There's still a lot of time in the future, and there will be plenty of opportunities. We'll talk about it later. My brother had the Eye of Heaven taken away by Qin Feiyang. With his personality, do you think he'll let it go? Let's just wait and watch the show." The little princess of the dragons chuckled. When the white-haired old lady heard this, she couldn't help but nod and smile. "Your Highness, don't delay your cultivation. Everyone thinks that the first prince is the #1 monster in the dragon clan, but they don't know that the real #1 monster is here." Monster? This kind of false reputation is only for those who don't have the ability but still want to be valued by others. And I don't need it at all. The little princess of the dragons sneered. At the peak of the mountain, Long Qin took out a round table and 4 stools. The 4 of them sat around the table. Long Qin looked at Li Feng while making tea and asked suspiciously, "Brother Qin, does this little brother of yours have something against me?" Because from the moment he entered the dragon nest until now, Li Feng's eyes were filled with murderous intent when he looked at Long Qin and his sister. "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Why? I really don't remember having any interaction with him." Long Qin was puzzled. "You have to blame your people. Back then, you dragons ruled Divine Land, and your people bullied people and did all kinds of evil. Li Feng's village was massacred by you dragons. Although this incident happened a long time ago and the dragons of the ancient world are almost extinct, to Li Feng, you siblings and your mother Long Zun are the culprits." Qin Feiyang didn't hide anything. "I see." Long Qin nodded and looked at Li Feng apologetically. He sighed. "I didn't expect my dragons to bring so much harm to you in Divine Land back then. I'm really sorry." Li Feng sneered. "You want to settle this with just an apology? How could it be so simple? Brother, Why are you apologizing to him? Does he have the right? The Princess of the Dragons smiled disdainfully. What did you say? Do you believe that I'll cripple you now? Li Feng immediately stared at the Princess of the Dragons. His blood-red eyes were like a beast's, full of hostility. Cripple me? Do you have the ability? The Princess of the Dragons didn't show any fear. Instead, her eyes were full of provocation. Li Feng clenched his hands, and the power of the law of time and space spread out. The atmosphere suddenly became solemn. Qin, don't you remember what I said? Long Qin glared fiercely at the Princess of the Dragons. Humph! The Princess of the Dragons snorted and turned her head away. Long Qin looked at Li Feng helplessly and said, Brother, I'm really sorry. If possible, I'd like to make up for the harm the dragons have done to you. Make up? Li Feng was so angry that he laughed. So many innocent people died, tragically. How are you going to make up for it? Long Qin fell silent. Then how are you going to make up for the fact that my dragons were slaughtered by Qin Feiyang and the others? The Princess of the Dragons interrupted. Is it Qin Dage's fault? It's clearly your dragon race who asked for it. Li Feng sneered. Okay. Let's talk about these old debts later. Long Qin poured 2 cups of tea and handed it to Qin Feiyang and Li Feng. He smiled and said, Brother Qin, you came to me this time because of the promise I made to you. It's good that you still remember. Qin Feiyang took the teacup and smiled faintly. I definitely won't forget my promise to you. Long Qin smiled. With a wave of his hand, the 4 divine weapons appeared. They were the broken sword, the 1,000 Phoenix Mountain, the purple gold Dragon Ball, and the thieving Heaven Realm. Qin Feiyang infused his divine sense into the 4 divine weapons. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he sent them into the Black Tortoise world. Next, he had to think of a way to take back the other half of the Emperor's sword from the hands of the Divine Kingdom. Princess Dragon snorted and said, You're lucky that you met my big brother. If it were me, do you think I would return it to you? Qin Feiyang was too lazy to pay attention to this kind of behavior. He looked at Long Qin and asked, What about Chang Shui and the seal of my 2 war souls? As I said before, I really can't promise you. Moreover, I haven't contacted my father yet. Long Qin shook his head. Qin Feiyang frowned. Whether it was Chang Shui or the seal of the 2 war souls, they were all thorns in his heart. But regarding this, to be honest, Long Qin might not have this ability, because Chang Shui was taken away by Small Beast, and the 2 war souls were also sealed by Small Beast. Long Qin could at most help to convey the message. In the end, it still depended on Small Beast's attitude. How annoying. I'll try my best. Long Qin sighed. Thank you. For this matter, whether Long Qin was sincere or not, he should say thank you. Chapter 3895. Long Qin waved his hand and said with a smile, I've given you what you want. Now, let's discuss who will fight in the first battle. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously, Emperor Feather and the others have already looked for you? No. Why did they look for me? Long Qin was puzzled. If they didn't look for you, why did you mention this? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. You've also discussed this? Long Qin was also quite surprised. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, This is the second thing I came to you for. Long Qin was startled for a moment before laughing. It seems our hearts really are connected. We're thinking of the same thing. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but smile bitterly. They were obviously opponents, but they had such tacit understanding. Was this the so-called ill-fated relationship? Then, tell me what you think. Since Long Qin had thought of this, he must have his own ideas. In this first battle, we can only win. We can't lose, so we have to be careful about who we choose. Here's what I think. Yun Ziang and Li Feng have already fought. The Divine Kingdom will definitely focus on them, so they can't be the first to fight. Long Chen said. You really have the same idea. Qin Feiyang was helpless. So it's really a pity that we didn't become friends. Long Chen shook his head and smiled. Friends. This word was a little distant for him and Long Chen. He asked, Then who is your candidate? Long Qin. Long Chen said. Long Qin. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng were stunned. Long Chen glanced at them and said with a smile, Long Qin is my sister. Long Qin. Qin Feiyang looked at Princess of Dragons. What are you looking at? Be careful not to dig out your eyeballs. Long Qin glared at him. No. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Long Chen and frowned. Does she have the strength? Who are you looking down on? Long Qin immediately glared at Qin Feiyang. Qin. Long Chen glared at her and smiled at Qin Feiyang. Don't look down on my sister. Her current strength is not inferior to yours and mine. No way. Qin Feiyang was surprised. Why don't we have a fight? Long Qin looked at Qin Feiyang with a provocative expression. You're not done? Long Chen's expression darkened. It was really a headache. Long Qin snorted coldly in dissatisfaction. She was also very angry in her heart. Was he really her biological brother? Why does he always speak for outsiders? Long Chen sighed helplessly and said, Brother Qin, you know my character. I don't like to rely on my father, but my sister is different. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Yes, she will do everything she can to get what she wants from my father. For example, the inheritance of the ultimate profound meaning. You should know that with my father's ability, it is not difficult to find 2 or 3 ultimate profound meaning inheritances. Back then, after she was bullied by you in the Nether King's Hell, she followed my father to cultivate in seclusion for a while. In short, putting aside your 3,000 incarnations and the Eye of Heaven, your current strength may not be as strong as her. Long Qin smiled confidently. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Yes, although Long Qin was not a good person, she had a powerful father. What she wanted wasn't it just a matter of opening her mouth. It was indeed different for people who had backing. Take the inheritance of the ultimate profound meaning, for example. People like them could not get it even if they tried their best. However, Long Qin had people delivering it to her even when she was sitting at home. This was the gap. The saying, comparisons are odious, was not false at all. You don't have any objections, right? Long Qin asked with a smile. You have so much confidence in her. What else can I have? Qin Feiyang shook his head. I am not willing. Long Qin pursed her lips. Qin, this is not a child's play. You must be obedient, because only by winning the first battle can the creatures of the Sky Cloud realm get rid of the panic. And at that time you have to win easily, Long Chen reminded. Long Qin said indifferently, Didn't someone think that he is very strong? Let someone make a move. Cough, cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and said speechlessly, I never said that I was very strong. Isn't that what you think? Long Qin looked at him with disdain. Whatever you say, as long as you are happy. Qin Feiyang finished the tea in the cup, got up, looked at Li Feng and said, Let's go. Li Feng also got up. He did not want to stay in this place for a moment longer. Don't you want to stay for a while? Long Chen was taken aback. No, I don't want to be an eyesore to someone. Qin Feiyang shook his head and glanced at Long Qin. It's good that you know. Get out of here as soon as possible. Long Qin smiled coldly. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Long Chen looked at the two helplessly. If people didn't know, they would think that they were a pair of quarrelsome lovers. Buzz. But just as Li Feng opened the passage, a voice transmission stone buzzed. Long Chen was stunned and took out the voice transmission stone. But at this time, Qin Feiyong's voice transmission stone also rang. And Qin Feiyong was stunned. Why did it ring at the same time as Long Chen's voice transmission stone? This was too much of a coincidence. He hurriedly took it out. Buzz! At this moment, Elder Hu's shadow appeared. After Long Chen activated the voice transmission stone, a familiar figure also appeared. It was the eldest prince of the dragons. Qin Feiyong and Long Chen looked at each other, then looked at Elder Hua and the eldest prince of the dragons and asked, "What's wrong?" Just now, a spy reported that the heavenly talents of the divine kingdom have appeared. Elder Hua said in a deep voice, "They're finally here." Qin Feiyong was stunned. His eyes flashed and he asked, "How many people are there?" "Only 10, Elder Hua said. "That's all?" Qin Feiyong was stunned and asked suspiciously, "Where are they now?" "They're coming to the exit of the eastern continent," Elder Hua said. "Got it. Don't worry, we'll take care of this matter. You should take advantage of the time to cultivate." Qin Feiyong smiled. "Okay." Elder Hua nodded, and the shadow disappeared. The conversation between Long Chen and the eldest prince of the dragons also ended. The content was similar to what Elder Hua had said. The two put away the voice transmission stone and smiled at each other. "How can you still smile?" Li Feng was speechless. The arrival of the heavenly talents of the divine kingdom meant that the war between the Sky Cloud realm and the divine kingdom was about to begin. But these two didn't seem nervous at all. "If I don't smile, should I cry?" Long Chen shook his head and smiled. He turned to look at Long Qin and said, "Little sister, it's your turn now. Try to impress Brother Qin." "Who is he? Why should I make him look at me in a different light?" Long Qin said in disdain. "Consider it for yourself. After cultivating for so many years, it's time to see the results." Long Qin said. He waved his hand and a space-time passage opened. He smiled and said, "Let's go and see the heavenly talents of the divine kingdom." The four stepped into the passage, one after another. Eastern continent, in front of the entrance to the land of the buried gods. At this moment, the spies of the various forces were no longer hiding. They gathered together and stared at the dark void inside. They could vaguely see 10 figures walking in the void. Each of them exuded a terrifying aura. Whoosh! With the arrival of Qin Feiyong and the other 3, the people of the various forces immediately surrounded them. Of course. For example, the spies of the Feng people and the Kirin clan looked at Qin Feiyong and Long Chen with hatred in their eyes. But Qin Feiyong and Long Chen didn't take it to heart. Their eyes swept directly to the land of the buried gods. With their current strength, they could actually feel pressure from the aura of those 10 people. It was obvious that those 10 people were not ordinary. Whoosh! At this moment, a few more figures appeared one after another. They were Qi Shaoyan of the Kirin clan, Hu Dahong of the Feng people, Yun Ziang and Emperor Sea Lion. "You guys are here too." Qin Feiyong looked at Qi Shaoyan, Yun Ziang, and Emperor Sea Lion smiled. "Of course, we have to come and take a look." Emperor Sea Lion smiled. "Where are the ancestors?" Qin Feiyong asked. "They are drinking on Sky Cloud Island." Emperor Sea Lion shook his head helplessly. "All right, it seems that they are really going to be hands-off managers." Qin Feiyong smiled bitterly. As for Hu Dahong, Qin Feiyong ignored him. He also didn't come to ask for a snub. He stood silently at the side and watched all of this. "Qin, or go." Long Qin smiled. Long Qin glanced at Qin Feiyong and stepped directly into the land of the buried gods. Who is she? Why did they let her enter the land of the buried gods? Are they going to let her fight with the geniuses of the divine kingdom? Are you kidding me? How can a woman defeat the geniuses of the divine kingdom? Apart from the dragons, the other forces didn't know Long Qin. Therefore, when they saw her enter the land of the buried gods alone, they couldn't help but discuss. Even Yun Ziang, Emperor Sea Lion, and Qi Shaoyan were the same. Yun Ziang glanced at Qin Feiyang and transmitted his voice. Li Feng, let's go too! Ah, Li Feng was stunned. We can't let a woman be in the limelight. Moreover, the people of the Divine Kingdom will definitely scold the men of the Sky Cloud Realm for hiding behind a woman. Yun Ziang thought. But Qin Dage won't let us make a move. Li Feng was conflicted. Don't worry about him. Besides, we're just going to take a look. We won't necessarily make a move. Yun Ziang said. Okay. The two hit it off. While Qin Feiyang and the others weren't paying attention, they rushed into the land of the buried gods with a whoosh. Qin Feiyang and Long Qin were stunned. A trace of helplessness appeared on their faces. These two really liked to be in the limelight. Long Qin ignored them. He looked at the first prince of the dragons and said, Go to the 4 continents now and spread the news. Why? The first prince of the dragons was puzzled. Let the creatures of the 4 continents watch the battle, of course. Long Qin smiled. The first prince of the dragons was stunned. Although he didn't know Long Chen's purpose, he listened to Long Chen's words. He immediately activated a teleportation device and left. What? The geniuses of the Divine Kingdom have arrived. Qin Feiyang and the others have already gone to accept the battle? Let's go and take a look. Not only the first prince of the dragons, but the disciples of the Heavenly Hall, Divine Hall, Demon Hall, and Rogue Cultivator Alliance were also spreading the news. At this moment, the 4 continents were in an uproar. Whether it was humans or beasts, they all rushed to the eastern continent. Chapter 3896. The Land of the Buried Gods. The dim sky and sultry air seemed to indicate that a great battle was about to begin. 10 young men and women came side by side. There were 6 men and 4 women. The men were tall and straight with a dignified appearance. The woman was an outstanding beauty, graceful and full of charm. Their expressions were calm and arrogant, as if they were walking in the back garden. Each of them showed an extraordinary temperament, like the stars in the sky, bright and dazzling. When Qin Feiyang and others arrived at the exit, they had already noticed the people outside the exit. These are the people of the Sky Cloud Realm. No one dares to come in and stop us. It seems that, as the elders said, the younger generation of the Sky Cloud Realm is a group of trash. You can't say that. Ants also have their value, and their value is to become our prey so that we can enjoy ourselves in the Sky Cloud Realm for 1,000 years. Why do we need 1,000 years? In minutes, we can suppress the younger generation of the Sky Cloud Realm. The 10 people talked and laughed, and their words were full of contempt for the Sky Cloud Realm. But before their voices faded, they saw Long Qin step into the land of the buried gods. The 10 people were immediately stunned. They just said that the Sky Cloud Realm was a group of trash and no one dared to stop them. And the next moment a person ran in, and it was a woman. They actually let a woman intercept them. Looking down on them, daring to despise them, they will pay the price. Immediately after, they saw Li Feng and Yun Ziang both enter the land of the buried gods. And, looking at Li Feng and Yun Ziang, the 10 people were stunned. These 2 people, they seemed to be the 2 heavens' prides of the Sky Cloud Realm that Old Wu mentioned. One of the blue-haired, young men frowned. It seems to be them. I heard that both of them have mastered an ultimate mystery, and that blood-haired man can summon 3 puppets which are somewhat similar to the 3,000 incarnations. Their strength is very impressive. A woman in red said, So what if they are puppets? In front of our Ryuko, anyone is an ant. Another black-haired young man smiled disdainfully as his gaze shifted to a purple-clad young man. The woman in red, the blue-haired young man, and the others could not help but look at the purple-clothed young man with a trace of fear in their eyes. The purple-clothed young man had his eyes closed the entire time. Even Long Qin and Yun Ziang didn't open their eyes when they entered the land of buried gods. Their faces were expressionless and cold. "Who are you calling an ant?" Long Qin swept over and stood in front of the 10 people. "Her looks are not bad. Fighting is really boring. Why don't you accompany us, brothers, to drink and chat? Let us experience the fine wine, delicacies, and beauties of the sky cloud realm." The corner of the blue-haired young man's mouth lifted slightly as he looked at Long Qin in a cynical manner. "You even dare to provoke Long Chen's younger sister?" Li Feng was stunned. "What, is she Long Chen's sister?" Yun Ziang was bewildered. "Yes, it's called Long Qin." Li Feng nodded. "Then isn't she the daughter of Ice Dragon?" Yun Ziang looked at Long Qin in surprise. No wonder this woman dared to come alone to intercept the heaven's pride of the divine kingdom. One had to know, as the daughter of Ice Dragon, even if she was a loser, she could be cultivated into a peerless heaven's pride. But I don't know how strong this woman is. But, according to Long Qin, she seems to be a bit powerful. Why don't we take a look first? Li Feng transmitted his voice. "Okay." Yun Ziang nodded. Since she was the daughter of Ice Dragon, he naturally had to take a good look. After all, she was a future rival. The two rushed to the back of Long Qin. "What are you guys doing here?" Long Qin was dissatisfied. Yun Ziang grinned and said, "Of course, we are here to cheer for you. Goddess, come on." "I think she is more like a neurotic," Li Feng muttered. "What did you say?" Long Qin turned her head and glared at Li Feng. Yun Ziang also stared at Li Feng angrily and said, "Li Feng, this is your fault. Long Qin is a goddess-level figure in the Sky Cloud realm. She is definitely the #1 person in the Sky Cloud realm. How can you say that about her? Besides, there are a few stray dogs next to her." "Who are you calling stray dogs?" The blue-haired youth raised his eyebrows and stared at Yun Ziang unkindly. Except for the purple-clothed youth, the others were also glaring at Yun Ziang. "Are you stupid? Is there anyone else here besides you?" "Of course I am scolding you." Yun Ziang laughed heartily. "What a bunch of cute idiots." Puff! Long Qin was still very angry, but when she heard Yun Ziang's words, she couldn't help but laugh. Li Feng's mouth was also twitching. These people were really stupid, coming up to be scolded. The blue-haired youth clenched his hands, and a trace of hostility crept up between his eyebrows. A terrifying aura erupted, and the other 9 people immediately took a few steps back. Except for the purple-clothed youth, their faces were full of playfulness. "You can't win, so you fight? What kind of man are you?" "I don't know if a gentleman uses his mouth or not." "Goddess, come on. Make him kneel under your skirt." Yun Ziang shouted fiercely. He thought that Li Feng would appear, but in the end Li Feng was dragged to the side. When Long Qin heard the last sentence, her face suddenly turned dark. Under her skirt? How could there be such a dirty person? She suppressed the anger in her heart and looked up at the blue-haired youth. Her face was full of disdain as she said lightly, "I don't want to bully you. Come at me together." "What?" The group of people looked at each other. She was even more arrogant than them. More importantly, she was a woman. How could they tolerate this? Yun Ziang was also stunned. Then he shook his head and smiled bitterly. She was indeed the daughter of Ice Dragon. No one could compare to her arrogance. The blue-haired youth came back to his senses and stared at Long Qin, asking, "Long Qin, right?" "I don't talk to dogs." Long Qin looked at the blue-haired youth proudly. "I can't help it." Yun Ziang grabbed Li Feng's shoulder and desperately tried to hold back his laughter. His face was red. This woman was really outrageous. She was completely different from Long Qin. Fortunately, the opponent now was not him. Otherwise, he would definitely go berserk. But now, he was very happy in his heart. because the one being humiliated was the divine kingdom's genius. At the same time, the blue-haired youth's expression stiffened. He never thought that he would be humiliated like this when he just came to the sky cloud realm. Even in the divine kingdom, he was a genius that countless people looked up to. Now, a woman from a low-level civilization was also arrogant in front of him. Boom! His aura surged. Heaven and earth shook. The power of Allah surged out and swept in all directions like a huge wave. This was the death law. Accompanied by a loud bang, a blood-red crescent moon rose, and the aura of death shrouded the world. This was the supreme profound of the death law. You dare to use a mere supreme profound to show off in front of an expert? It doesn't matter if you're a dog, but at least you should know your limits. Longqin smiled contemptuously, and a terrifying power of death emerged from her body. The next moment, the ultimate profound, the 18 layers of hell appeared out of nowhere. This place instantly turned into a battlefield of Azura. Countless evil spirits were howling. No way! This woman actually mastered the ultimate profound. Yun Xiang's expression froze. Li Feng couldn't help but frown. With Longqin's talent, it was impossible for her to comprehend the ultimate profound of the strongest law so quickly. After all, people like Qin Feiyang and Feng Zi had not comprehended an ultimate profound. Therefore, he was sure that this was the ultimate profound inheritance that Ice Dragon had given her. With a backer, it was really different. He had risked his life in the Sky Bell divine treasure and had only grasped to ultimate profound. However, this woman could obtain the inheritance without doing anything. How could there be such a big difference between their fates? At the same time, opposite, the blue-haired youth and the others couldn't help but frown. They thought that among the younger generation of the Sky Cloud realm, only Li Feng and Yun Zhang had mastered the ultimate profound, but they didn't expect a woman to jump out now. Could it be that it was, as Yun Xiang had said before, that this woman was the number one person in the Sky Cloud realm? Boom! In the blink of an eye. Accompanied by a deafening sound, the 18 layers of hell shattered the sky and blasted toward the crescent moon. Although the supreme profound was powerful, how could it compete with the ultimate profound? In just an instant, the crescent moon collapsed, and the 18 layers of hell suppressed the blue-haired youth with the power to destroy the world. The earth was collapsing, and the void was shattering as if doomsday had arrived. Outside the exit, Long Chun waved his hand, and with a loud clang, the heavenly god sword appeared. Divine power rolled out and quickly sealed the exit to prevent the battle inside from harming the creatures outside. At this time, tens of thousands of creatures had rushed here to watch the battle. The moment the heavenly god sword appeared, the geniuses of the divine kingdom were shocked and looked up at the heavenly god sword. It was actually a mid-level sovereign divine weapon. It seemed that the Sky Cloud realm wasn't so weak. However, it was worth mentioning that the purple-robed youth didn't open his eyes even when he sensed the great divine power of the heavenly god sword. It was as if everything in this world wasn't worth his attention. On the battlefield, the 18 layers of hell emitted a destructive aura and crazily suppressed the blue-haired youth. However, the blue-haired youth wasn't nervous at all. He even calmly observed the heavenly god sword. Seeing that the 18 layers of hell were about to fall, the blue-haired youth finally retracted his gaze and looked at Long Qin with ridicule in his eyes. The next moment, he took a step and instantly disappeared without a trace. The supreme profound of the time law, instant time. Boom! The 18 layers of hell bombarded the ground. Billowing dust and smoke covered the sky and earth. Long Qin stood in the dust and smoke and scanned the surroundings. Clang! Suddenly there was a sword cry. Following closely, a sharp light that could tear the sky and earth surged out. In the next moment, the blue-haired young man appeared behind Long Qin. He was holding a translucent sword in his hand. The sword radiance that seemed to be able to destroy the world surged toward Longqin, the ultimate profound of the time law. Yunxiang and Li Feng's eyes darkened. The geniuses of the divine kingdom were indeed not to be underestimated. Two supreme laws. Among them, the death law had comprehended the supreme profound. The time law had mastered the ultimate profound. This strength, if it weren't for the fact that they had gone to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure and obtained a lot of good fortune, no one in the Sky Cloud realm could compete with these geniuses of the divine kingdom. Chapter 3897. The ultimate profundity of the time law not only had the strongest lethality, but it was also as fast as lightning. Clang! In just an instant, the long sword was in front of Longqin. The sharp edge covered the sky and earth, destroying everything in all directions. But in this regard, Longqin's expression didn't change. She took a step forward and instantly disappeared in front of the blue-haired youth. What? Moment of time. The blue-haired youth's pupils contracted. This woman actually grasped two supreme laws as well. The next moment, accompanied by a loud clang, a sharp edge that could tear the sky and earth apart, swept from behind. This aura, the blue-haired youth's expression changed again. Because he himself had mastered the time law, he was particularly familiar with the aura of the time law. Just as the sharp edge emerged behind him, he immediately knew that this was also the ultimate profundity of the time law. Indeed, at this moment, Longqin's hand was holding an identical, translucent long sword. Her eyes were full of mockery. The long sword was like a graceful swan as it flew out of her hand, crossed the river of time, and instantly attacked behind the blue-haired youth. At this time, it was too late for the blue-haired youth to dodge. Accompanied by a painful scream, the blue-haired youth's body shattered on the spot in the void. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, and his divine soul fled for his life. With this strength, you dare to come to the Sky Cloud realm to be arrogant. Who gave you the courage? Although she was a woman, her domineering aura was unparalleled. The long sword tore through the sky, carrying a sharp edge that could destroy heaven and earth, and attacked the blue-haired youth. How dare you? Not far away, on the side of the divine kingdom's heaven's pride, the other people who were watching the battle slightly changed their expressions. Among them, a red-clothed woman and a black-clothed youth roared in unison and immediately rushed toward the blue-haired youth's divine soul. And at the same time, a power of law emerged from the two of them. Boom! The next moment, two ultimate profundities appeared. The red-haired woman mastered the ultimate profundity of the death law. The black-clothed youth mastered the ultimate profundity of the destruction law. The two ultimate profundities shattered the void and the earth as they madly attacked Longqin. They never expected that Longqin's strength would be so strong. She alone had mastered two ultimate profundities. For the divine kingdom, this was really a bad start. It was a humiliation. Phut! You're actually bullying me with numbers. Li Feng cursed angrily, killing intent erupting from his body. Although he hated the dragon race, hated Long Chen, Long Qin, and Long Zun, he wouldn't drag his personal grudges into this matter when it came to the bigger picture. The laws of space-time's ultimate profundity was instantly activated. A vast river of stars descended from the sky. Countless stars twinkled, exuding a godly might that could destroy the world. Seeing that Li Feng had made a move, Yunxiang decisively activated the law of death's ultimate profundity. This was the ultimate inheritance that the divine king of primal chaos had given him. The two ultimate mysteries were like divine weapons descending from the heavens, instantly clashing with the ultimate mysteries of the two women in red. A destructive aura burst out from his body. The periphery of the land of the buried gods had been razed to the ground, and the shockwaves from the battle were still spreading towards the central region. Wherever the shock waves went, mountains collapsed and the void collapsed. It was as if doomsday had arrived. After all, this was the ultimate profound. The 4 ultimate profound were equivalent to 4 sovereign divine weapons. Their destructive power could be imagined. At the same time, a shrill scream was particularly ear-piercing. Longchin caught up with the blue-haired youth's divine soul in one step. Without any mercy, he slashed his long sword angrily. The blue-haired youth's divine soul was annihilated on the spot, leaving only a scream that echoed in the sky above the periphery for a long time. The geniuses of the divine kingdom were stunned. Outside the exit at this moment, hundreds of thousands of humans and beasts had gathered, densely packed. But at this moment they were also stunned. A genius of the divine kingdom who had mastered the strongest law of ultimate profundity was killed just like that? This woman, she was too strong. Even if she was from the divine kingdom, she was merciless. So strong. Who exactly is she? How come I've never seen her before? Her strength is not inferior to the supergiants like the Dragon King. Everyone's heart couldn't help but be turbulent. This was the genius of our sky cloud realm. What was the divine kingdom? While everyone was shocked, their hearts were also burning with hope and fighting spirit. With such a genius overseeing the sky cloud realm, what were they afraid of? At the front of the exit, Qin Feiyang and Long Qin stood side by side. Without looking back, they could already feel the fighting spirit of the hundreds of thousands of creatures behind them. It seems that the effect is very good. Long Chen smiled slightly. When Long Qin and the blue-haired youth first exchanged blows, the living beings that came here were still in a state of panic. But at this moment, with the death of the blue-haired youth, the atmosphere was completely different. This was equivalent to a shot of cardiac stimulant. It let everyone see hope and the strength of the sky cloud realm. In fact, the younger generation of the sky cloud realm was not weaker than the divine kingdom. It's all thanks to your sister. But then again, the 2 ultimate profundity of the ultimate profundity are really surprising. Qin Feiyang looked at Long Qin with a trace of a smile on his face. Regardless of the previous grudges, regardless of the future position, Long Qin's current performance was indeed impeccable. She took the initiative to challenge and killed with one blow. Not only did she take the divine kingdom's genius down a notch, but she also boosted their morale. Long Qin chuckled and said, "So when we were in the dragon nest, I told you that my sister must not be underestimated now. Then how many ultimate profundity inheritance did she get from your father?" Qin Feiyang was curious. "I don't know either, but what I have she has." Long Qin shook his head. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. The profoundness hidden in this sentence was extraordinary. What Long Qin had. Didn't this mean that Long Qin had the Sky God sword and Long Qin also had an intermediate sovereign divine weapon? Sure enough. Sometimes comparing oneself to others was really infuriating. On the battlefield, Long Qin waved his hand, and the long sword returned to his hand. He looked at Li Feng and Yun Ziang and said unhappily, "Who told you to interfere? Don't bite the hand that feeds you. You don't know how to appreciate others' kindness. If we didn't come to help, would you have killed that wild dog?" Li Feng raised his eyebrows. "They're just a bunch of trash. If you didn't help, I would have killed them all the same. Mind your own business." Long Qin snorted coldly. "Trash?" The woman in red and the others clenched their fists. One moment he called them a wild dog, and the next moment he called them trash. Did he really think that they were made of mud? Boom! The 2 of them were furious. The Death Edict and the Destruction Edict were activated again, and they charged toward Long Qin angrily. "Get lost." Long Qin glared at Li Feng and Yun Ziang. He took a step forward, and the long sword in his hand immediately surged with thousands of sword qi, covering the sky and earth. At the same time, the Death Edict surged out, and the 18 layers of hell appeared, carrying with it a monstrous, demonic power. You really don't know what's good for you. Let's retreat. Yun Ziang glared at Long Qin angrily, and then retreated far away with Li Feng. You want to show off? Fine. I'll fulfill your wish. Let's see how you're going to block all the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom. As time passed, the battle gradually reached its climax. Although it was 1 against 2, Long Qin didn't show any signs of being at a disadvantage. It was as if he was possessed by a goddess of war. The more the red-haired woman and the black-clothed youth fought, the more frightened they became. Before coming to the Sky Cloud realm, Old Wu had warned them to be careful of Li Feng and Yun Ziang, because these two were the geniuses of the Sky Cloud realm, and their strength wasn't inferior to theirs. But they never expected that the first opponent they faced after coming to the Sky Cloud realm wasn't Li Feng and Yun Ziang, but a woman they had never mentioned before. And this woman's strength was stronger than Li Feng and Yun Ziang. Her methods were also extremely ruthless, directly killing one of their companions. One must know, a person like the blue-haired youth, no matter where he was, would be a bright sun. Even the Divine Kingdom couldn't bear the loss of such a genius. Is that all you've got? If that's the case, I advise you to come back as soon as possible. Otherwise, sooner or later, you'll be annihilated. Long Qin faced the stormy attacks of the two with ease, his indifferent face full of disdain. Annihilated? What a boastful tone. The two were furious. Boom! Accompanied by a terrifying aura, 2 laws emerged from their bodies. In an instant, this world was drowned by thunder, sword chi, and murderous aura. What? Li Feng and Yun Ziang were shocked. Both of them had actually grasped 3 ultimate profundities. The red-haired woman's 3 ultimate profound were the death law, thunder law, and slaughter law. The black-clothed youth's 3 ultimate profound were the destruction law, thunder law, and sword law. 3 ultimate profound meanings. This was a level higher than theirs, because even Li Feng only mastered 2 ultimate profound, the space-time law and the slaughter law. As for Yun Ziang, he had only grasped the ultimate profundity of the laws of death. Was this the strength of the Divine Kingdom's geniuses? They were indeed powerful. At the same time, the hundreds of thousands of creatures outside the exit couldn't help but panic again when they saw the powerful strength displayed by the red-haired woman and the black-clothed youth. Even a single ultimate profundity was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for them, let alone 3 ultimate profundities. If these young people were so powerful, then how terrifying would the older generation of the Divine Kingdom be? Facing such a Divine Kingdom, was there any hope for the Sky Cloud realm? Qin Feiyang and Long Qin saw this change, but they didn't say anything. They silently looked at Long Qin. They must win this battle, otherwise the panic would spread again, and it would be more intense than before. Because in the past, although they were afraid, they didn't witness the strength of the Divine Kingdom with their own eyes. But this time, they all saw it with their own eyes. If Long Qin was defeated here, the negative impact would be unimaginable. Boom! On the battlefield, the red-haired woman and the black-clothed youth were both filled with murderous aura. 6 ultimate profound. 2 ultimate profound of the strongest laws opened the way in front. For ultimate profound of the ordinary, laws followed closely behind. They majestically charged toward Long Qin. A peerlessly terrifying aura shook the heavens and earth. At this moment, not to mention others, even Long Chen's heart couldn't help but jump to his throat. Although they were siblings, he knew nothing about his sister's strength. Chapter 3898. But Li Feng and Yun Ziang looked at Long Qin gloatingly. Let's see how you deal with this. If it was a one-on-one battle, neither the woman in red nor the black-clothed youth would be a match for Long Qin. This was because the two ultimate profundities that Long Qin had grasped could easily crush their ordinary ultimate profundities. But it was different now. Now the two of them were joining forces. Their combined combat power had far surpassed Long Qin's. As expected, after Long Qin activated the two ultimate profundities of the law of time and the law of death, as well as the strongest ultimate profundities of the two women in red, the four ultimate profundities of the two ordinary ultimate profundities instantly arrived before Long Qin. Terrifying lightning, sword energy, and killing intent surged toward Long Qin like a torrent. This is the price of being arrogant. How can a lowly civilization like the Sky Cloud Realm compare to the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom? The few geniuses of the Divine Kingdom couldn't help but sneer. But Long Qin's expression didn't change in the face of four ultimate laws of ordinary laws. There was even a hint of mockery at the corner of his mouth. Yun Xiang and Li Feng frowned. He was too calm. A terrifying thought emerged in their minds. No way! This woman also mastered an ultimate law of the strongest ultimate law, right? Woo-woo! Just as this thought arose, rays of golden divine light emerged from Long Qin's body. In an instant, it shone in all directions, turning the sky and earth here into a golden ocean. If one looked closely, they would find that the golden divine light was formed by intertwining golden threads. It was like an inescapable net that enveloped heaven and earth. This is outside the exit. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. He sensed a familiar aura in the golden divine light. It was the power of cause and effect. Those golden threads were the power of cause and effect. Countless karmic forces intertwined and merged with one another. In just an instant, a gigantic golden lotus appeared out of nowhere. The divine lotus was tens of thousands of feet tall. It was like a giant mountain in the sky. There were a total of 9 lotus leaves. Each lotus leaf seemed to be made of gold and emitted a dazzling radiance. Karma Divine Lotus. She's actually mastered the ultimate profundities of the 3 strongest laws of nature. Qin Feiyang was shocked, because right now he had mastered the ultimate profundity of the laws of karma. How much inheritance did the ice dragon give to this woman? 3 ultimate profundities of the strongest laws. This was enough to show disdain for all the young geniuses of the Sky Cloud Realm. No, this strength was enough to show disdain for the entire Sky Cloud Realm. This was because even those of the older generation, such as the Dragon King, the Feather Emperor, and the Blood Ancestor, were no match for him. Perhaps among the older generation, only Little Rabbit had such strength. This was because the little rabbit had obtained the inheritance of 2 ultimate profundities of ultimate laws in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. In addition to its own comprehension over the years, it should have mastered at least 3 ultimate profundities of ultimate laws. Perhaps there would be even more. There's hope. 3 ultimate profundities of the strongest laws. I'm afraid that even the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom are inferior to her. Who is she? When did our Sky Cloud Realm give birth to such a monster? Wait. Previously, I saw her come with Qin Feiyang and the others. Could it be that she's Qin Feiyang's confidant? It's possible. Apart from the people around Qin Feiyang, who else could be so monstrous? Everyone discussed in low voices. When Qin Feiyang heard these discussions, the corner of his mouth twitched fiercely. He didn't admire anything, but he admired everyone's imagination. They could even think of a confidant. On the battlefield, the red-clothed woman and the black-clothed youth were also dumbfounded. The Divine Kingdom's geniuses, who were watching from the sidelines, were also the same. The strength that Long Qin had displayed was completely beyond their imagination. This woman must be the number 1 of the younger generation of the Sky Cloud Realm. 3 ultimate profundities of the strongest laws. She was ridiculously strong. Now do you know how ridiculous you are? Long Qin's face was full of contempt. The karma divine lotus crashed down, and the 4 ultimate profundities of the ordinary laws were shattered on the spot. This was the power of the ultimate profundities of the strongest laws. No matter how many ultimate profundities of the ordinary laws there were, it was difficult to block the sharpness of the ultimate profundities of the strongest laws. As the 4 ultimate profundities of the ordinary laws were shattered, Long Qin waved his hand, and the karma divine lotus instantly arrived in front of the red-haired woman and the black-clothed youth. "Quickly dodge!" a brawny young man roared. But it was too late. The karma divine lotus crashed down, and the 2 screamed as their bodies exploded in the void at the same time. Blood dyed the surroundings red. Immediately after, their divine souls weren't spared and were directly crushed by the karma divine lotus. The 2 great geniuses of the divine kingdom were annihilated. "Good kill. Goddess, come on." Hundreds of thousands of creatures roared outside as if they had been injected with chicken blood. After killing 3 great geniuses in a row, everyone's morale, fighting spirit, and blood had been completely stimulated. The geniuses of the divine kingdom were nothing special at all. One had to know, on the side of the sky cloud realm, there were still monsters like Long Chun, Qin Feiyang, and Lunatic who hadn't made a move yet. Although they still didn't know how strong Long Chun, Qin Feiyang, and Lunatic were now, they knew that it was definitely not ordinary from the strength displayed by Li Feng. Moreover, Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Lord had all died in the hands of Long Qin. To be able to kill the 3 lords of the Forbidden Zones, how could he be weak? Next, Long Qin stood in the void like an empress, looking down at the remaining 7 geniuses of the divine kingdom. The purple-clothed youth still had his eyes closed. It was as if he didn't notice everything that had happened before. The other 6 all had a trace of panic on their faces. 3 ultimate profundities of the strongest laws. Such strength had already far surpassed theirs. They originally thought that with their strength it would be easy to conquer the geniuses of the sky cloud realm, but they never expected that they would be conquered instead. This was the low-level civilization that the elders of the divine kingdom spoke of? To hell with it. A low-level civilization could cultivate such a terrifying monster? In fact, they didn't know that the siblings Long Qin and Long Chen were purely 2 exceptions. In short, for this pair of siblings, they couldn't be measured by the standard of the sky cloud realm. Even people like Qin Feiyang were exceptions, because they didn't belong to the sky cloud realm. To truly judge the strength of the sky cloud realm, one had to start from people like the dragon's crown prince, because the dragon's crown prince and the others were the normal standard of the younger generation of the sky cloud realm. Of course, even if they weren't born and raised here, Qin Feiyang and the others were also duty-bound for the vast land of the sky cloud realm. After all, the sky cloud realm was the first line of defense. If the sky cloud realm's line of defense collapsed, then the Nether Kings held the first and second levels of the miracle, and even the ancient realm and great Qin would suffer a calamity. Brother Qin, did you notice that person? Long Chen looked at the purple-clothed youth who didn't move at all and never opened his eyes. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. He felt a strong sense of danger from this person, and he was too calm. He was so calm that it was a little abnormal. 3 of his companions were killed one after another, and he didn't even react at all. I think our real opponent should be him. Long Chen's eyes were a little expectant. Yes. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang frowned, and a trace of surprise crept up in his eyes. What's wrong? Long Chen was suspicious. Why is there a kind of familiar aura? Qin Feiyang frowned. Familiar? Long Chen was slightly taken aback. Looking at the purple-clothed youth, he secretly said, "He can't be from the purple, gold, divine, dragon clan, right?" Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. At the same time, the remaining 6 prodigies of the divine kingdom also looked at the purple-clothed youth, as if they were begging him to fight. but they seemed to be afraid and didn't dare to speak. Seeing that the purple-clothed youth didn't respond for a long time, the 6 of them sighed helplessly. One of the young men gritted his teeth, looked up at Long Chin, and shouted, "I'll fight with you!" "I thought you were scared out of your wits and didn't dare to fight." Long Chin sneered. "Don't be arrogant. Why don't you make a request that you're not allowed to use the sovereign divine weapon? Then you have the right to be arrogant now." The young man snorted. "Sovereign divine weapon?" Long Chin was slightly taken aback, looking at the young man. His face was full of amusement. He actually mentioned a sovereign divine weapon to her. He must be dreaming. As the daughter of the dragon god, and in such a chaotic situation, how could she not have a sovereign divine weapon to defend herself? Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. "Don't you think it's embarrassing enough?" The purple-clothed youth, who had his eyes closed, slowly opened his eyes, revealing a pair of purple-gold pupils. "Ryuko!" The young man hurriedly looked at the purple-clothed youth with a trace of joy in his eyes. At the same time, when Qin Feiyang saw that pair of purple-gold pupils, the intimacy in his heart that blood was thicker than water became even stronger. Without a doubt, this person was the purple-gold divine dragon. Useless trash. The purple-clothed youth glanced at the 6 people indifferently, looked up at Long Chin and said expressionlessly, "You have the aura of a divine dragon on you. You shouldn't be a human, right?" Likewise, Long Chin responded indifferently. Obviously, she also saw that the purple-clothed youth was a true dragon. The purple-clothed youth retracted his gaze and said coldly, "I'm not interested in you, and you're not worthy of being my opponent." "What?" Long Chin raised her eyebrows. She had killed 3 supreme talents of the divine kingdom in a row and was feeling proud of herself. But suddenly, someone jumped out and said that she was not worthy of being his opponent. Wasn't this tantamount to humiliating her? The purple-clothed youth ignored Long Chin and turned to the entrance of the burial ground, saying, "Where is Qin Shaotian?" Qin Shaotian? Qin Feiyang and Long Chen were stunned. Hundreds of thousands of creatures were also stunned. Qin Shaotian? Was there such a person in the sky cloud realm? Wait, the Temple Lord seems to have said that this Qin Shaotian seems to be Qin Feiyang in disguise. And he also said that we can't reveal this information to the people of the Divine Kingdom. Yes, yes. The higher-ups of our temple also said so. Several giants of our rogue cultivator alliance also said so. Everyone was secretly discussing. It turned out that not only the people of the various forces, but even the ferocious beasts and sea beasts knew about this. But no one said anything. They all kept their mouths shut. After all, this was the order of the giants, and it had something to do with Qin Feiyang. Moreover, in the face of the divine kingdom, whether it was the human clan, ferocious beasts, sea beasts, dragons, foam people, or the Kirin clan, they should all be united. Chapter 3. Release at 10:30. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.